If your kid acts up at daycare and they sit them out from recess because of it, does that justify being upset with them? We'll get to that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for asking my brother to accommodate my son at his child-free wedding and refusing to drop it? A few months ago, my older brother asked me to be his best man and my husband to be a groomsman. He and I have always been close and he was the best man at our much smaller ceremony. At the time I committed to this obligation, no real planning had taken place, so everyone was on standby waiting for further details and an official date. I'm not sure when they began properly planning things, but I didn't hear much more about it until November during our Thanksgiving family gathering. My brother's fiance told us the venue, the date, and the fact that the wedding was going to be child-free. Now, I have no issue with the concept of child-free weddings. I had one myself. The problem is that my husband and I are expecting a baby. If all goes well with our surrogate's pregnancy, fingers crossed, our son will be 3 months old by the wedding date given. The venue they've chose is 2.5 hours from where we live. We would likely be spending 3 days away from home. You can call me an overprotective first-time parent, but the thought of both my husband and I being away from our child for that long, when he's so little, scares me. And he's not even here yet. My in-laws could watch him, and I trust them completely, but I know I wouldn't be able to properly enjoy the festivities if my infant is over 2 hours away from me. I pulled my brother aside later in the night and apologized profusely while explaining my worries. He said he understood and offered up a venue change, one much closer to home, or maybe making an exception for me by inviting my in-laws to the wedding. That way I could see the baby during the ceremony and feel a little less stressed. I told him either would work for me and thanked him. He spoke to his fiancée, but she won't budge on either issue. He's vented to me multiple times over the course of the month that's now passed about how he's really frustrated because what matters most to him is making sure he's surrounded by the people he loves and that they're comfortable. Meanwhile, his fiancée continually repeats that she's not giving up her dream venue and ceremony. I told him my husband and I could just attend as guests instead if it would make things easier, but he immediately shut me down and said he wanted us by his side. She texted me yesterday, politely I'll admit, asking if I could please just drop things with my brother. I might have considered it previously, but hearing how she turned down all of my brother's requests for compromise made me put my foot down and refuse. I hate causing my brother trouble like this, especially so close to the holidays, but I feel like she's showing her true colors. Am I the jerk? I don't think OP's a jerk for having these concerns and asking for a possible compromise, but I also don't think that she necessarily is in the wrong for not wanting to budge. If she says no and you keep pressing the issue, maybe you are the jerk. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting to decide whether or not everybody here is a jerk, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my family they can't use Spanish on Christmas Day or my husband and I are not coming? My 35-year-old female family is Mexican and we live in Texas. Everyone in my family is bilingual and they tend to mix English and Spanish constantly. My siblings' spouses have all learned some Spanish, some better, some worse, but they can still participate in all conversations. I've been with my husband for 10 years. He took a few classes, but he found it too difficult and decided that he can't learn a language as it's his thing, just like math isn't his thing, and he dropped it. Every family gathering, there's a lot of them, he feels left out because everyone switches back and forth and he doesn't understand them. I have to translate for him, and it really must be uncomfortable for him. This year, he said he's not coming. He feels excluded, and even when he talks with non-Mexican spouses, they mix and match languages, and he felt it's to mock him because there's no need to. I called my mother and told her that they must promise to not speak Spanish because it's excluding my husband, or we're not coming. My mother was angry. She told me they're not going to police their speech, and that they were accommodating for the first few years, but he made no effort, and it's ridiculous that he doesn't even try. I told her he at least did try, but she knows it's difficult for him. She said that he's no longer invited and I can come on my own. I was really angry and repeated my ultimatum. This didn't go down well. My whole family is pissed off, my husband's on my side, and I don't know anymore. Am I the jerk for giving them the ultimatum? Would you guys agree with me when I say it's ridiculous to go to a get-together at someone else's house and try to dictate what languages they do or don't use? Our next story is, am I the jerk for not letting my teenage daughter weigh in on the bathroom remodel? I have a 14-year-old female daughter. We moved a few years ago to a bigger house in the same neighborhood. Because it's a bigger house, my daughter can now have her own full bathroom, and me and my husband share another one. The shower in the bathroom that my daughter uses broke, so we just took the opportunity to get a full remodel. My husband and I found furniture we liked that complemented our bathroom, and was also a good nice theme I wanted. We got a paint color that we knew my daughter liked pretty well. Our remodel started a few days ago. My daughter and I were out of the house, staying at a friend's, while my husband worked from home in the basement. My daughter told me that she was stressed out because she didn't know what she was getting put in the bathroom. I told her she was nowhere as stressed as I was because this isn't her house and her money. She then proceeded to tell me that she was upset that she didn't get to have a say in what was happening in her bathroom, and she didn't know if she would like the bathroom. I told her it was my house and that we'd put a color she liked, which she said wasn't what she wanted. I told her she was being spoiled and she shouldn't think she gets to make all of the decisions. She said that I wasn't being fair and that I was making the bathroom she'd be using all about what I wanted. But she'll graduate soonish and then I'll still have the bathroom. She claims she just wants a compromise. But why should I compromise how I make my house look? My husband hasn't really weighed in on this, but am I the jerk? I'm pretty sure my child is being entitled. I think not even hearing her out as far as what she wants kinda sucks, but I don't think you can really be the jerk for wanting to make sure that you like a remodeled part of your own home. This next story is, am I the jerk for leaving my husband for a Christmas trip to Hawaii with our kids? Every year, my family spends our Christmas in Hawaii. We've done it every year since I can remember, and it's a fun family tradition for me. After me and my husband had kids, we had to reorganize our family Christmas plans because his parents wanted to see our kids for Christmas. So we decided that we would celebrate Christmas with his parents on New Year's and go to Hawaii for actual Christmas. That was the system that worked for us until last year. Last year, his dad passed away around this time of year, and it hit him and his mom hard. For obvious reasons, we didn't go to Hawaii. This year, we planned out what we would do for the holidays early. We would do Thanksgiving with his mom, and we would do Christmas in Hawaii since me and the kids missed out last year. Things were going well until right before our flight. About a week out, he said he was unsure. He said that he thinks it might be better that we stay. He said he really wanted to spend Christmas with his family and felt like his mom really needed it. I was unhappy about this. We made a plan. We saw her last month, and we already had my dad buy our tickets and hotel, so it would be incredibly unfair to me, him, and our kids for us to not go just for his mom, who we would see a few days after we got back anyways. We got into an argument about it and proposed that me and the kids can go to Hawaii and he can stay there with his mom. He decided to do this, but he was clearly very upset that I wasn't going to forego my family's Christmas tradition and seeing my family just for his mom. So now I'm in Hawaii watching and wrangling the kids by myself while he's home alone. He hasn't texted me or responded to me much. When I call him, he only talks for about 3 minutes before wanting to get off the phone with me and talk to the girls. Am I the jerk? I get if emotions are high, they get cold feet, they want to see their mom again. 100% if he wants to do that, go ahead and go do that, but don't tank this vacation for everybody else because you're in your feelings. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not pumping up my girlfriend's gas? I'm 19-year-old male, my girlfriend, 18-year-old female, got her license about 3 months ago. But last week was the first time that I've been in the car with her while she was driving. My car was in the shop and she came to pick me up from work. And on our way back, she decides to stop at a gas station. We pull up to the machine. She looks at me funny for a moment, doesn't say anything, and then gets out of the car and starts pumping her gas. When she gets back in the car, I ask her what the funny look was for and she says, "Really? How do I have a man in the car and I'm the one pumping gas?" I said, "Because it's your car and you're the one driving?" She says, "Wow, and you're not even a little bit embarrassed?" watching your girlfriend pump gas in the cold while you're sitting in the nice warm car listening to music? I say, no, I was actually quite comfortable, and if I wasn't here, wouldn't you have to pump the gas by yourself anyway? She says, but that's the point. You're here. A woman should never have to pump gas while the man's in the car. My dad, uncle, cousin, brother, nephew, whoever would have never just did what you did just now. I say, well, I'm not them, and I don't subscribe to that. Can we go now? Mind you, the whole time we were having this conversation, she hasn't even started the car. The gas station is filling up with cars, and she's literally hogging a machine. She says, I'm not moving until you apologize. To make it even worse, the guy waiting in the car behind us walks over and politely taps on the window and says, hey, sorry, are you guys leaving or? She rolls the window down and asks him, if your girlfriend or wife was driving, would you still pump her gas? He says, probably. And she looks at me in victory and we finally move. She says, seriously, don't ever do that again. I probably should have let it go, but I couldn't. I said, no, if we're in your car and you're driving, you're pumping the gas. She starts going off again until I can't take it anymore. I get out and start walking down side streets to a friend's place. She's following me, calling my name and my phone, but I ignore her and eventually lose her when she gets stuck at a red light. Since last Friday, I've been getting all sorts of angry messages and texts from her friends about how I'm not a real man for not pumping gas, and even my friends were telling me, yeah man, you should always pump the girl's gas, it's just principle. The whole week was finals week, so I didn't really pay too much attention to what they were saying, but finals ended yesterday and I'm home now for Christmas. My extended family's all here, so I decided to ask them if a guy should always pump gas for the girl. I'm confused because all the men are saying yes, but all the women are saying that while they appreciate the men doing it, they can also do it by themselves, even when a man's in the car. They're all still arguing downstairs and it's getting pretty heated, so I decided to write you guys to ask, am I the jerk and should I apologize? This is 100% one of those courtesy things where, it's nice if you do it and you could even ask for it of your man, but if they don't automatically do it, that's not justification to get mad at them and flip out at them. Our next story is, am I the jerk because I slept in my daughter's bed? I, 25-year-old female, got married to my husband, 24-year-old male who we'll call Adam. When Adam and I were dating, I found out I was pregnant with my ex's kid. Adam didn't care and was thrilled because he's infertile and has always wanted to be a dad. I tried for over a year to get in contact with my ex to see if he wanted to be a dad, and he nor his family ever answered me, even when I went to their houses. So Adam's been my daughter's, 3-year-old female who we'll call Callie, dad her whole life, and legally adopted her at 2. Sorry for the tangent, but it's relevant. We're in freezing cold weather and have lost power during higher temps than this for the last 2 years. A kid in our neighborhood got really sick last year because he nearly froze. So I set up my and my husband's bed to be kind of a tent so it would keep all the body heat in. It's a California king, so there's plenty of room for us, Callie, and our dog, who sleeps with us anyway. I got Callie ready for bed and tucked her in our bed to finish getting ready. Adam asked why she was in our bed, and I explained that I was afraid of the power going out because we've already gotten warnings in the past 2 years. He was angry and said that he shouldn't have to share his bed with her because he might want loving. I told him that I wasn't going to be in the mood tonight because it's 6 degrees and I'd be worried about Callie. Long story short, after a huge fight, I took the whole setup, so only leaving him the sheets, duvet, and one blanket, and did it over my daughter's bed. I slept in there with her, and our dog followed us. Adam was so angry this morning that he accused me of wanting a divorce. I just told him that Callie was coming to work with me today, and I'm dropping the dog off at my mother's since she works from home, so he's not alone in case the power goes off. Adam went off to work, and I'm getting texts from my in-laws and a couple mutual friends. Someone even texted that expecting him to share a bed with a girl he's not related to is disgusting. But that just makes me question him and his family that that's their thought process. Am I the jerk? I just was worried about my literal 3-year-old. Even if I am though, I'm doing it again tonight. I just want to know because I'm furious at him for blowing it out of proportion. But maybe he's right to be mad? I don't know. Definitely not the jerk. This guy is just focused on whether or not they can hook up, even when you have a cause for concern. Our next story is, am I the jerk for saying that my husband's reaction to a miscarriage is excessive? I need to know if I'm being reasonable or heartless here. My husband, 27-year-old male, has a longtime friend who we'll call Bill, 31-year-old male. The two of them met when my husband was 16, and from the way they always tell the story, they've been inseparable ever since. Bill's now married and lives nearby with his wife. They announced their pregnancy a while ago, and my husband was absolutely overjoyed for them. He would visit as often as he could, and it seemed like he was single-handedly funding the baby's wardrobe and nursery, honestly. Unfortunately, they suffered a miscarriage just before the 6-month mark. Bill and his wife were understandably devastated, and so was my husband. I got it. He was watching his best friend go through something unimaginably painful. He was often gone for long periods of time comforting Bill, because not only had he suffered this loss, their marriage didn't seem to be holding up very well either. The marriage occurred at the end of September. Now, this is where I might be a huge jerk, so I'm in desperate need of judgment. I completely empathize with Bill and his wife still needing time to recover, but my husband is also acting as if this is fresh. Not just in the way he's still comforting his friend during his free time or excusing himself to take hours-long phone calls, but the intensity of his emotions. I caught him crying about a week ago, and when I asked him what about, he got angry with me and said it should be obvious. I was surprised to be met with such malice over a simple question, so I tried to gently suggest that maybe therapy would be beneficial. He was feeling this loss like it was his own, and I didn't find that to be very healthy. In fact, I'd been concerned about him since mid-October, if I was honest, but had no idea how to broach the subject. The conversation that followed didn't go well, and my husband said his emotions were perfectly normal and that maybe I was just lacking in empathy. He's been avoiding me since. Am I the jerk? Maybe if you said, oh, your emotions are invalid, you would be the jerk. But you just said you don't think they're healthy and that therapy, which I think everybody needs regardless, should be considered. I don't think that makes you the jerk. This next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to pay for my boyfriend's vodka after smashing it? I, 26-year-old female, have been with my boyfriend Sean, 25-year-old male, for about a year and a half. It's been great, but I let him know from the outset that I was a recovering alcoholic. He had no problem with that, and he still drinks with his friends, but won't do that in my presence. It still bothers me that he drinks, but it's his life. I can't tell him what to do. Fast forward to last Sunday and we're at his apartment. I come in, and he's in the middle of making pasta sauce, and there's a large bottle of vodka on the counter. I didn't say anything about the bottle, but he saw me staring at it and told me it's for the sauce. Pasta sauce he's made me at least twice a month for the entirety of our relationship. He said he's told me from the beginning he does it, that it cooks away, but I think that would be something I would very much remember, and I got a little angry. I knocked the bottle off the counter and went to my mom's. He's called and apologized for triggering me and that he was being brainless, but he wants me to pay for the broken bottle, which he says was about an $80 brand. I told him that I wasn't under any circumstances going to pay for something he's been lacing my food with for years. We haven't really talked since, and my mom wants me to just go ahead and buy the thing to make amends, and I'm still refusing. Am I the jerk? I don't blame OP for being scared of relapsing or scared of losing progress with recovery, but this feels like an overreaction. Am I wrong? Our next story is, am I the jerk for not allowing my daughter to spend Christmas with me and my new family? I, 46-year-old female, am the mother of a 24-year-old woman from my first marriage and 12 and 10-year-old boys from my second marriage. When I was married to my first husband, he was unemployed almost all of our marriage. We lived in a house his father owned. His father paid our bills. He bought us the car we drove. He sent my husband money to take care of our family, etc. I was young, stupid, and in love. That's my only excuse for living like that. When my daughter turned 5, I started pushing my husband to work. I myself got a job. He didn't want to. things escalated and ended up in us getting divorced. He got full custody while I got visitations every other Saturday. His dad hired a good lawyer. I couldn't do that. I also had to pay child support. I used to work full-time and 2 part-time jobs to afford my 1-bedroom apartment as well as the child support payments. A year after our divorce, my ex married a new woman. There was a lot of child alienation from them, and sadly, I couldn't afford to take them to court again. By the time my daughter turned 14, she was calling me by my name and calling her stepmom, Mom. I tried my best to hold on to my kid. I went to all the events I could go to. I planned fun days with the limited funds I had. Even when I couldn't afford to turn on the heat, I still made sure to get her a Christmas gift. Sadly, by the time she turned 16, she no longer wanted to have anything to do with me. I took them to court, but they did nothing. And the last time I saw her, she said some very awful things to me. I was defeated, but I decided that I no longer had a daughter, since that's literally what she wanted. I moved away, met a good man, married him, and had 2 wonderful kids. Last year, my daughter reached out. She was sorry, said that she wanted to reconnect. I was hesitant and resentful, but I still talk with her once a week. She suddenly asks if she could spend Christmas with us. She wanted to get to know her brothers. I told her that we weren't in a stage where I could allow that. It got heated, but I told her I couldn't trust her with my kids and that I still wasn't 100% sure that I wanted our relationship to become more. She says that I'm a jerk, that I'm punishing her for things she had no control over, that I know what she told me and how she reacted to me was a direct result of her father's manipulation. Am I the jerk? I mean, considering the kid themselves are saying that they were manipulated, they realize that now and they want a relationship, I think OP's allowing themselves to stay a little too in their feelings. This next story is, am I the jerk for wanting to pull my daughter out of her daycare because they made her miss recess? My daughter, 2, just got light-up princess heels from a family member. She loves these shoes and wants to wear them everywhere. She wore them to daycare on Tuesday, and when I picked my daughter up, she was wearing a pair of socks from the school instead of her shoes. They asked me to send acceptable shoes in her backpack if she wants to wear her heels. When I got home, I checked the school's dress code, and there was absolutely nothing about shoes, except the kids have to be able to comfortably play in them. My daughter's very comfortable in her heels. She wears them to the park, the grocery store, pretty much every time we leave the house, and she never complains. So I didn't think there was anything wrong with her wearing them to school. She wore them again to school yesterday. Shortly after I dropped her off, I got a call from her teacher saying I needed to drop off a new pair of shoes. But I was already at work, so I couldn't get her a new pair. When I picked her up, it was the same thing. Her heels were in her backpack and she was wearing socks. The teacher told me they couldn't let her out for recess because of her shoes. I was livid when I was told that she couldn't play at a recess because of her shoes. First of all, she's worn those shoes to the park, so I know she can play in them. Second, it's not her fault that I couldn't drop off a new pair of shoes, so I don't see why she has to be punished for it. I want to pull her out of this daycare and find a better one, but my husband's refusing because his kids, he has kids from a previous marriage, went there and they all love it. I personally think they're treating my daughter unfairly and that we should look for a better daycare. Am I the jerk? It may not be expressly in the rule book, but I think it doesn't take a genius to realize no daycare worker wants to try to watch a kid at the playground wearing heels. Also, is it really that good for a young kid to be wearing heels regardless? Our next story is, am I the jerk for calling out my mom after she excluded my girlfriend and the kids from our snow globe tradition? I've, male 23, been dating my girlfriend Ellie, female 31, for almost a year. Ellie has 2 kids, female 6 and male 4, and we get along really well. I have a big family and it's pretty much impossible to have one Christmas event and expect everyone to make it, so my parents host their celebration the week before. My mom has a tradition with the kids, us, where she gives mini snow globes. The event was last Saturday, and as usual, Mom pulled us aside and gave us this year's snow globes. Now, the snow globe giving extends to partners, and I was expecting Ellie and the kids to receive one. My brother's wife Jane, female 27 or 28, was there and mom gave her and her 5-year-old daughter snow globes. My mom's reasoning is that she doesn't know Ellie well enough to be included, but I said being my partner should be enough and she should have at least included the kids. Ellie came to the event with me and she was upset when she saw my mom didn't get one for her or the kids. I got kind of annoyed and told mom that she gets snow globes for Jane and her daughter. Considering my brother wasn't her son, we're half brothers. If that's the case, then she's excluding Ellie for no reason. My mom got defensive and started getting mad, and we ended up leaving early. I just don't think what mom did was right. These aren't expensive and she could have got 3 more, so Ellie and the kids could be included. I'd get it if it was just for us, but she gets them for partners and kids too. I got a few texts later from my sister saying I'm creating issues, and we disrespected my parents and Jane, and should apologize. Am I the jerk? I'm sorry, but I think OP is a jerk because they're not married. This isn't a spouse. You may act and treat them like one, but you haven't even been dating for a full year yet. This next story is, am I the jerk for sleeping naked because my roommate's girlfriend keeps waking me up? I, 19-year-old male, have a roommate. He has a girlfriend, call her L. Since they've been seeing each other and when she's been staying around, she's walked in on me and pulled the covers off as a joke. She's also walked in on me and my girlfriend, which was the final straw. My roommate has been doing nothing about this, saying, I can't control her. A few days ago, my girlfriend was in our flat, and so was L. My girlfriend's been getting pissed at L walking in on us. I told her to sleep naked and she'll stop probably. At 6, me and my girlfriend were sleeping and L busted through the door and saw us butt naked together. She screamed like she saw a murder scene. My roommate walked in and told us that we should have been wearing clothes. I told him that she needs to learn about privacy first. He told us we were acting childish. We didn't care if we were acting childish. She needed to know that it's weird walking in on people like that. So, am I the jerk? Definitely not the jerk. 100%. Don't barge in on people in their bedrooms, and God forbid you're naked in your bedroom while sleeping. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people sleep every night like that. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not letting our kids eat my wife's cooking? I, 34-year-old male, have a wife, 32-year-old female, and we have 2 children, 4-year-old female and 7-year-old male. I work as a manager at a care home, and my wife owns a bakery with her mom. My wife cooks all the time because she's much better at cooking than I am. I cook sometimes. She's the one who takes care of the house, kids, and chores. Yesterday when I came back from work, dinner was ready, so I plated it up for everyone while my wife was washing her hands. My kids like their food cut up. I was cutting their chickens into pieces and it looked a bit pink. I told my wife to look at it and she said, "It's a little pink, but it's fine." I told her I'm not letting them eat this if it's pink. She told me to stop being a baby and it won't kill them. I kept telling her it's pink in the middle, they shouldn't eat that, they can get food poisoning and that it's dangerous for them. She told me, if you don't want them eating it, then you can cook their dinner. I made them cheese and ham toasties, also made her one, but she didn't eat it. She told me that she isn't talking to me if I think her cooking is horrible. I don't think it's horrible, I just didn't want our kids eating that. I told her to stop thinking she was right. So, am I the jerk? If it's slightly pink, put it back in the oven or even just microwave it for a short amount of time. Also, if they cooked it properly, which means checking that the temperature was 165, even if it looks pink, it's safe. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay my cousin's hospital bill? A few years ago, I, 32-year-old female, took over my mom's portion of the family annual Thanksgiving host rotation. It's a fun event because I get to see family I generally don't see the rest of the year, and I love hosting. It's semi-potluck, and I made a point of asking about allergies and food preferences. This year, my cousin, 36-year-old male, told me he was joining with his new wife. They got married in July, and her daughter, who's around 8. Cousin was added to the group chat and didn't say anything about allergies or preferences when asked. Fast forward to Thanksgiving, one of the desserts I made was peanut butter cookies. My family and I love them. Cousin's stepdaughter ate one and is allergic to peanuts. I had no idea and would have never made them if I knew. Husband and I took them to a standalone emergency room that was about 5 minutes from the house. We stayed with them for some time until she was transferred to the local hospital where she stayed overnight. She ended up being fine. Last week, I got a text from cousin with a picture of the hospital bill. He wanted to know how I wanted to handle it. I called and he and his wife expect us to pay the bill. I told him that we weren't going to do that. I reminded him that he had told me nobody had allergies. And hubby and I did the copay at the ER, $500, because we felt bad. He had an argument and now the family's involved. They're mostly on my side, but some are getting into me for having anything peanut related because everybody has peanut allergies nowadays. The bill's about $6,000. We don't have it. The $500 came out of our Christmas budget. I feel bad his stepdaughter got sick. Ultimately though, it's their responsibility to handle things like this. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay? If you have kids with food allergies, you take extra precaution at a potluck. I don't think this could be OP's fault at all, do you guys? Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting the chance to decide whether or not all these people are jerks, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for not disclosing I had plastic surgery to my boyfriend? I, 26-year-old female, have been dating Max, 25-year-old male, for 4 months. When I was 22, I had a nose job as I broke my nose twice as a kid, and it left it with a large bump. Then at 23, I had a breast augmentation that bumped me up 2 cup sizes. These were lifelong insecurities that I was bullied over, and it was really relieving to get them done. On to the present, I met Max through a friend, and things have been great. Last night, I was strolling through my social media while on the sofa with him. I stopped on an old classmate's vacation photo where she wore a bikini and frankly had very obvious implants. She looks great, happy for her, but you can tell. Max glanced over at that moment and said, "Gross." I asked him what the deal was, and he said women who get implants or other surgeries are a huge turnoff to most guys, and how men prefer natural over 2 balloons and how insecure she looks. I couldn't help but laugh and said, "So you're turned off by me?" He got very confused and asked what I meant. I informed him I had procedures done before. He kept denying it and saying I was joking until I showed him old photos of me. He got quiet and left shortly after. I got a text saying I should have disclosed this on the first date, how I led him on and that he needs to reconsider things. It's the next day, haven't heard anything. I'm bewildered. Am I the jerk? Let's be honest, I think the most hilarious thing here is them saying that you have to disclose this on the first date. I'm not ridiculous in saying that it's hilarious, right? Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my friend that he wasn't obliged to hang around my wife? I'm male 29, my wife 30-year-old female, and my best friend Cyan, 25-year-old male, do not see eye to eye. Some backstory, my wife and I moved for my new job. Cyan was the cousin of a high school friend, so I was thrilled to know someone. We quickly became best friends, closer than brothers. In COVID, our job was in person versus my wife's work from home. Cyan is a very kind person. I think wife hated everything about Cyan. She thought he was too goofy and hated how he teased her. My wife takes things seriously, and she's a romantic, so things like date nights are a big deal to her. She hated when Cyan hung out even when I invited him. A few months ago, I had a 4-month project across the world. I needed the promotion. My wife ended up needing surgery, and she, unlike me, didn't make close friends here. Her friends and family were too far. She couldn't do normal things post-surgery and wanted me to come back. I complained to Cyan, and he suggested that he pop on over to help her. He ended up doing a lot more, and my wife heavily relied on his kindness. When I came back, it was like my wife flipped her switch. Things that were immature became playful. She constantly fell his fish for compliments, and it was like Cyan could do no wrong. Cyan still hung out, but it was like he couldn't snap out of caretaker mode. The two of them are practically joined at the hip. When I went to work, my wife packed Cyan a lunch too, and his is a lot better than hers or mine. Cyan needs this or that or whatever. She showers him with attention. My wife can be overbearing like that. At a small party, I came with my wife, and she immediately zoomed to Cyan and monopolized all his time. After he went to the bathroom, which was basically the only time she left him alone, I pulled him aside and told him I knew my wife was clingy and it was okay if he kept boundaries. He wasn't obliged to hang around my wife. I said it kindly. He turned red, told me I was a jerk, and stormed away. He left without saying goodbye to anybody but my wife. Am I the jerk? I told some mutual friends about this and most of them are on my side. They said Cyan didn't know how to stand up for himself. He was embarrassed. Cyan is still pissed. If something that Cyan and your wife are doing upsets you, probably want to talk to the person that's closer to you, your wife, or at least is supposed to be. This next story is, am I the jerk firmly telling my husband that I won't agree to invite his friend's widow to our Christmas dinner? My husband's friend passed away months ago, leaving behind his widow wife. My husband considered him a brother, and so he began offering help to his widow and showing up literally every weekend, that's when he's off work, to help her with everything. It didn't bother me, not much, but still. Now he told me it would be nice if we invite her to Christmas dinner with us, since she has no family and other friends are busy. I refused, but he insisted, saying it would mean so much to her, especially since this is her first Christmas without her husband and we should comfort her. I refused and said that it's supposed to be a family celebration, and my family will show up, so there's enough amount of guests already, but he said she's the one who needs this family atmosphere the most. I snapped and firmly told him I will not agree to let him invite her to Christmas dinner with us, and he needed to drop it because it made me uncomfortable. He argued, then started sulking about it, saying that I was being cruel for no reason, and that he wasn't asking for much, just an extra chair and plate for her. But I said it'll be awkward for me and my family, especially since we're not so close. Am I the jerk? Honestly, I'm so torn on this one. I totally understand not wanting to invite somebody you don't really know to your family Christmas celebration, but this person does desperately need it. I'd like to know what you guys think. Our next story is, am I the jerk for how I responded to my dad and stepmom trying to force us to watch their wedding video? I'm 14-year-old female and my brother is a 10-year-old male. Our dad's been with Carol for close to 2 years and they got married in early November. Carol hates us, especially me. She calls me a problem child and is always picking at me, being rude to me. She constantly compares us to her daughters, constantly picks fights, and tries to parent my brother and I. She yells and calls us names when we have to go over. If one of her daughters does something to us, like taking our stuff, she just brushes it off and laughs. And our dad just lets it happen. We have no choice but to see him 4 times a month because he and our mom's court agreement, but we hate it there and we hate Carol. So we didn't go to their wedding, even though dad was super pissed and fought with us about it for 2 months after we told him we weren't going. So we skipped the wedding. Last Sunday, he picked us up like usual and drove us to his house. I noticed right away they were in a better mood than they've been lately. Carol was blabbing at us about their honeymoon in Florida. When we got to the house, Dad announced they had something to show us and for us to go sit in the living room while he got it. Me and my brother went and sat down, but we both had a feeling. The girls were nowhere around, which was weird. Carol came to sit on the other couch, and she was just staring at us, looking like she had won something. And my dad comes in with a Blu-ray disc and puts it into the player and sits with Carol, and Carol says in this happy, witchy voice, "This is since the two of you missed it. You can see what you missed." It started playing and we realized it was a video of their wedding day. A few seconds in, it was edited to a clip of them saying "I do" and kissing. My brother saw this and started to cry, and I just got so mad. We hate Carol, and that's why we didn't go in the first place. She wasn't gonna force us to look at it now. So I grabbed my brother's hand and pulled him up off the couch and said we weren't gonna watch this. Carol sneered and said we had no choice. I told her she would never be in charge of us, no matter how much she wished she was, and told my dad we were leaving. I admit I shouted this part. She told me to stop being a little witch, and I shouted back that she's a big fat witch who should know better. Rude, I know. She shouted at my dad, "Are you just gonna let her talk to me like that?" And Dad just kind of laughed and said he wasn't dealing with this and went to his room and locked the door. I took my brother to get his stuff on, grabbed my bag, and left, with Carol screaming at me most of that time. I don't know most of what she was saying. It was too loud and screamy. I started walking with my brother down the side of the road and called Mom and my cell to come get us. We walked about 10 minutes before she met us on the road. Dad's mad at me, Carol's pissed, but I don't care. Mom's upset only because she thinks I shouldn't have walked my brother along the road. If I'm the jerk, it's alright. Goes without saying they don't like her. It's really weird for her to be like, you have no choice, you have to watch this. I don't think OP could be the jerk. This next story is, am I the jerk for responding to my father's request for a relationship with a detailed PowerPoint on why he will never be forgiven? If I'm the jerk here, I'll own it. I'm not sorry, but it would be good to know because the rest of the family thinks this went too far. My 24-year-old female mom died when I was 7 from leukemia. I have very few memories of her from before she was sick, and I didn't get to spend a lot of time with her in her last year. But she was an artist, and until she couldn't anymore, she would make me little collages when she was in the hospital, with drawings and photos and messages for me. My grandmother put them all in a book for me after she died. I wanted to be like my mom, and my counselor thought it would help, so I started a journal where I did kind of a similar thing, and I've done at least 1 page a week, all these years ever since my mom died. More when I miss her or have something hard going on. So I have kind of a unique record of my mental state over the last 16 years. My father remarried when I was 9. My stepmother really leaned hard into the "I'm your mom now," and my father didn't stop her. It improved when they had my half-brother because she basically forgot about me then. Unfortunately, he got cancer when he was 3, and I pretty much ceased to exist for my father. He was either working or gone with my brother, and I spent all my teen years mostly working at home alone or with my grandparents. The mantra was that my brother needed to be the focus because he might die, so I needed to not be selfish since I was healthy. I stopped trying to talk to him when I was 16, and it was a dark time. I moved out when I was 18 and cut them off completely. My grandparents let me know that my brother died a couple of years ago, but respected my desire to remain no contact with my father. He recently reached out to them because he wants to see me and talk. I went through my old journals and made him a PowerPoint with images of the entries where I talked about being frustrated and feeling abandoned and unwanted, some with literal quotes of things my dad had said to me during arguments, even the really dark stuff from when I was seriously depressed. Then I ended it with a photo of one of my mom's collages where she had written, "Remember that your dad and I are always here for you." And I wrote, "You failed, go away," underneath. I felt like him being able to see it from my literal perspective would communicate why I don't want him back better than I could. Evidently it worked, but a little too well because I've been bombarded by family telling me that it's understandable that I don't want to see him. But what I sent gutted him, and he's completely fallen apart after reading through it, and that it was unnecessarily cruel. Maybe it was. I know my bar for that is kind of weird sometimes. So am I the jerk? I don't think what OP did was too far or made them the jerk, but from the sounds of it, I'm willing to bet that this was finally what made what OP was going through click with that father. This next story is, am I the jerk for using stuff my in-laws send however I want? My wife and I have a 3-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son. I'll call them D and Sam for brevity. My in-laws often send us stuff for the kids, and it's usually addressed to Sam. I ignore this as the kids are so close in age, 11 months, and are at similar developmental stages. I never put much thought into why Sam's name is usually on the packages. Whenever they send a toy, it just goes in the playroom and the kids don't have individual toys, unless you count the stuffed animals they sleep with. My wife initially wanted to divide the toys into different chests for each kid. I said that didn't make sense, and it makes cleaning and organizing the room take longer. When I pick up the playroom, I organize the toys by type, and that makes them fit into less space and makes it impossible to forget what goes where, so things are easier to find. My wife admitted I was right, so that's how we've been doing things for a while. Today, my in-laws were visiting and saw D playing with a toy. My mother-in-law asked why D had Sam's toy. I said, we don't split the toys up like that. None of the toys are Sam's or D's. All the toys belong to Sam and D. My mother-in-law was upset because she picked that toy out specifically for Sam. I just sort of shrugged. It's a plastic frog. There's nothing special about it. Father-in-law asked if I did that with everything they sent. And I said most things, but the kids do have their special stuffed animals they sleep with. Both were upset and started arguing with my wife in their language way too fast for me to keep up with. But it basically amounted to me being an ungrateful and rude jerk. Then they left. My wife said going forward, we should keep toys bought for Sam separate because it upsets her parents that the toys are communal. I said I wasn't okay with that. If we do that, we'd have to buy more stuff for D and less for Sam for them to have an equal number of toys. That would make Sam think we like him less than D, and D thinks her grandparents like her less than Sam. I said if her parents aren't okay with that, they shouldn't send stuff. Now things are really tense, with her and her parents both mad at me. I'm questioning if I was being a stubborn jerk. I think the way they've been handling things here doesn't make them the jerk. If the kids were older and things were a little bit more personalized, maybe, but I think we can all kind of tell who the real jerks here are. Our next story is, am I the jerk for pushing my husband to insist we host Christmas again over his sister? My husband is one of 3 siblings, and they usually rotate who hosts Christmas. It's usually the same people who go every year, give or take a few. It is my husband and I with our 2 kids, his sister and husband with their 3 kids, his younger brother and his daughter, his mom and dad, grandma, usually an aunt and uncle and maybe a cousin or 2, not to mention his brother-in-law's parents and maybe a sibling come too. I really don't want to sound like I'm this type of person because I don't judge anybody on their house size or their wealth, but the issue is that his sister's house is so freaking tiny it's uncomfortable for everyone there. It actually isn't even an individual house, but it's half of a duplex type. There will be about 20 people coming this year, and I just think it's ridiculous for her to insist on hosting. They also have a large Great Dane that is on top of everyone. Well, actually, everyone is on top of everyone. I kid you not, half the guests have to sit on the living room floor to eat. Usually the older relatives sit at the 4-person dining table, a few people sit on the couch, and the rest of us are standing or sitting on the floor with our plates of food. Oh, and the last big kicker is that there's only one bathroom that constantly smells like poop. My kids always complain about going to this aunt's house because of the reasons I listed. I'm siding with them and said I would talk to Dad about us volunteering to host. We don't live in a mansion, but we can comfortably fit all the guests, and we have more than one bathroom. Husband doesn't want to because he says it'll hurt his sister's feelings. And she already knows how poor they are, and this would be rubbing it in her face. I don't think that should be the case. I think she should want the family to be comfortable. I'm sure she must know we don't love sitting on the floor in that cramped house. I'm not sure if I sound like a spoiled jerk right now, or if I'm right. I don't think OP needed to go as hard into it as they did, but I don't think they're the jerk for not wanting a situation where half the party has to sit on the floor in a cramped house. Try doing a co-host type situation at your place. Our next story is, am I the jerk for calling my girlfriend selfish for not picking my kids up from school? I, male 36, have been with my girlfriend, female 32, for 2 years. I have 2 boys, male 13 and male 9, from my previous relationship. Their mom's not in the picture. I work full-time, and my girlfriend used to stay home and take care of everything else. I still help out here and there, yet she would complain about the kids causing constant messes, not receiving proper discipline, accidents like breaking a vase, and the list goes on. She complained that she's more of a parent than I am, which isn't true since I provide an income. Yet she decided that she wanted to go back to work and started looking. She found a potential job and her interview was yesterday. I called her to remind her to pick the kids up from school since she's responsible for it, but she said she was about to start her interview and told me to go get them. I was stunned. I told her I couldn't because I was at work. She then said I could take a break, but I refused because this would affect my job. I asked if she would take 10 minutes to quickly go pick them up, but she refused. We ended up getting into an argument and me telling her that she should have figured something out beforehand. She blew up saying that I'm the parent and that she was tired of being at my beck and call all the time. The kids ended up being picked up by my friend 40 minutes later, which made them upset. At home, I got into a huge argument with my girlfriend, calling her selfish for doing this to the kids and ditching them like that. She said that she had an important interview and that I, as the parent, could have figured something out instead of expecting her to drop what she was doing and pick the kids up. She called me a jerk, then went to stay with her mom. The only thing I'm getting caught up on is if she gave fair warning about the interview. If they had an expected routine where she was picking the kids up, that is a little rude to leave them in the dark like that. But ultimately, the girlfriend isn't responsible for the kids. Our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to give my father and his wife money that my father saved for me before he met her? My father married his wife when I was 12, 4 years after my mom died from cancer. My father's wife had a 3-year-old daughter who, a year into their marriage, was diagnosed with a form of cancer that's tricky to treat. She underwent chemo and radiation, but the treatment didn't work. They were told about this alternative treatment that wasn't offered in any local hospital, and it would require staying someplace else for at least 3 months with her. The treatment itself was also expensive. My father was never wealthy, neither was his wife, and her daughter's father and his family weren't in her life. There was only one thing that was easily sold and would make enough money to get started on the journey, and that was my mom's engagement ring. It was left to me in her will and was mine. Before my mom, it was her mother and grandmother's ring. My great-grandparents helped someone out, and it was a gift that was then passed down because of its value. It was extra sentimental because my grandma was in a nursing home with dementia at the time, and I had no other living maternal family left. My father decided that it could be sold to pay for the treatment. I said no, I begged him not to. He and his wife told me her daughter's life was more important and that it would be selfish to keep a ring and let her die. I told my father I would never forgive him if he sold the ring, and that he was stealing from me because it was mine. He went ahead and sold it anyway, and I stayed true to my word. I never forgave them. I moved out in March before turning 18 and cut them out of my life. I still hate the two of them and wanted nothing more to do with them again. My father tried to stay in my life, but I told him I hoped he knew he lost his daughter, me, and that I wish it had been him to die instead of my mom. His wife's daughter's cancer has returned, and now they want money that my dad saved for me before he even married her. It's not a lot of money at all, but I guess they have lingering stuff from when she was sick before. I told him I wouldn't give him the money, and the fact that he would ask for it showed that he didn't give a crap about me. His wife told me that it's not about me. It's about saving her daughter's life, and me being hung up on losing a ring that went on to save the life of a child. I told her that ring meant more to me than they did, and that I would not give them any money. So they needed to leave me alone and figure out another plan. My father's parents got involved, and I ended up deleting most of my social media and ignoring them. But then I saw my father's wife while I was grabbing groceries, and she told me I'm evil and sick and twisted, and that I should be ashamed of myself. I don't know if it's all just worn me down or what, but I feel like I need to ask, am I the jerk? I kind of understand why the dad did what they did, but I especially understand why OP feels the way they do. And especially considering it's their money, I think they have every right to say no, wouldn't you guys agree? Our next story is, am I the jerk for verifying anything important I ask my wife? My wife and I are on a budget. We both have decent jobs, but we also have a fair bit of debt. We want to be in a better financial position before we start a family. My wife has a horrible habit of not being entirely truthful about stuff. I'll ask her if she picked up groceries for supper or whether I should stop on the way home, and she'll say that she got them. Then when I get home, there are no groceries, and she'll say that she meant to do it before I got home but forgot. She just got a new phone on Black Friday last year. She's rough on her phones. So we went on Amazon and found a case she liked. We ordered it. I got the delivery notification while I was at work out of town. I asked her if she put the case on her new phone. She said yes. When I got home a couple of days later, I saw the Amazon box unopened, and her new phone had a crack on it already. She said that my call reminded her and that she was going to do it, but got busy. She does this constantly. I've asked her to please just be truthful. I had to go out again after I got home to get groceries. I don't really care about that. It's just a pain in the butt to have to leave the house to get them when I could have stopped at the store on the way home. Much easier. She complained about her new phone being broken, and we paid the repair out of our budget. It may have gotten broken even with a case on it, but I feel that's unlikely. So now if I ask her a question about something important, I verify the answer. If we have to go somewhere on the weekend and we need a full tank of gas, I'll ask her if she filled it up or if we need to stop on our way out of town. If she said she filled it, I'll ask her for a picture of the fuel gauge. To my complete astonishment, she then texts me that she meant that she would do it before I get home. She says that I'm being petty and a jerk for not trusting her word. I don't think I can trust her about some stuff. I'm just sick of having to change plans because she chooses to lie. Whether it's laziness or forgetfulness, I think almost anybody would be really frustrated in that situation. Wouldn't this behavior drive you guys crazy? That said, our final story of the day is, am I the jerk for telling my mother that she and her step-grandchildren are not part of my family and are not owed money? My mother had me with a sperm donor. He was someone she knew who was willing to let her have a child to raise herself. When I was 12, Mom met her husband. Her husband had a 17-year-old daughter at the time. Her husband and his daughter were jerks, and Mom threw me in at the deep end, and she thought I would see this dude as my dad because I never had one before. Even at 12, I knew a guy who commented on how I didn't smile like a girl should, and who commented on my weird interests for a girl was never going to be worthy of being called my parent, let alone my dad. His daughter taunted me for having no dad and for not being cute enough when my donor didn't fall in love with me and decide to be my dad. I asked her if she understood what a sperm donor was. She told me someone who makes freaks. When I was 16, her husband's daughter moved back in with her boyfriend and their kids. I was then forced to babysit after school and sometimes on the weekends because they either couldn't be bothered or nobody wanted to pay. I did the bare minimum of babysitting, and I didn't grow attached to those children in the 2-ish years I babysat them. I wanted nothing to do with babysitting them, but figured I could at least game when home with them rather than being grounded. I moved out and cut my mom off because she chose a husband who was a jerk to me and kept me around him and his daughter, who was also a jerk to me. I have nothing to do with any of them. A few months ago, my sperm donor died, and I learned he left all of his assets to me. It was a lot of money and a house that I sold, which gave me a lot of money. My mom learned about this via mutual friends, and she reached out and told me how much they've struggled financially since their house burned down 2 years ago. I had heard about that at the time, and how her step-grandkids are looking at a really bad Christmas, and how great it would be if I, as their aunt, her daughter, and part of the family bought gifts for the kids. I told her she and her step-grandkids are not my family and were not owed any money from me, and that I would like it if she did not make me change another number. She called me on a business number I have. She asked me how I could be so cold, and even if I resent her, how could I say that about this niece and nephew I spent every day with for 2 years and who looked up to and adored me? Am I the jerk? You could love and adore that niece and nephew and still not have any responsibility to give them money, bail them out, give them good Christmas gifts. As a whole, these people mistreated OP, used them as a glorified babysitter, and I think are only hitting them up because they want their money. So does that make OP the jerk for saying no and ignoring them? You be the judge. Am I the jerk for not wanting my husband's niece to stay with us? My husband has a niece, 16-year-old female, called Jenny. Everyone in the family adores Jenny. I've never met her dad, but apparently he's an abusive jerk. Jenny basically lives with her aunts and uncles. The family all dote on her. She can do no wrong. My husband is worse than all of them. We have a 2-year-old son, but my husband seems to love his niece more than our son. It's really frustrating because his family doesn't care about our son's accomplishments as much as Jenny, like, oh, your son learned how to walk? Well, Jenny could walk when she was 1 week old. Now, the problem, Jenny is supposed to be with us for Christmas. I don't want her here. I want to have Christmas with my son and husband. I want my son to get all of our attention. Jenny's other aunts and uncles are all willing to have her on Christmas, so I asked my husband to just let her be with them. He got mad at me and said it's our turn and he wants to have his niece with us. I told him I want to have a Christmas for our family only, and he then called me a jerk and said Jenny is family too. Am I the jerk? I don't get what OP has against Jenny here. They don't seem like they're acting spoiled. And let's be real, their 2-year-old is not going to remember that Christmas. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks or not, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, this next story is, am I the jerk for asking my cousin for the wedding gift back after she said I wasn't welcome at the reception? I'm 20-year-old female. My cousin Isabel, 26-year-old female, is getting married in January. I chose a set of Royal Albert plates from the gift registry, and they've already been delivered. The invitation said the ceremony would be first, followed immediately by meals, and guests would start making their way to the reception hall. The invitation also said to be prepared for a night of drinking and dancing at the reception. A couple days ago, Isabel called me. We made some more small talk. She then said she wanted to call just to confirm I knew the reception was more for partying and it really isn't suitable for me considering I'm not even 21. I said I'm fine drinking water and soda, but she replied the capacity for the reception hall is smaller, so they're not including younger guests. Mind you, this is a child-free wedding, so there isn't really any younger guests. I get not wanting to have kids around for the reception. Isabel said that I'm invited to the ceremony and dinner. I was confused and told her this was really weird. The invitation said ceremony and reception. She replied she's sorry for the misunderstanding, but it said there would be drinking and stuff. Eventually I told her, okay, I respect that, but if she could kindly send the plates back so I can get a refund. Isabel asked why, because I'm going to be there for the most important part and they've included me in the catering. I said I was expecting to attend the entire wedding, not half, and that I bought the gift based on that. I might not attend at all now, so she needs to send the plates back and I'll decide another suitable gift, if any. She said no one takes back gifts, and it's not like I'm uninvited. If I don't want to come now, that's on me and I've already gotten the gift. I also have gotten a text from my other cousin, Isabel's sister, that I'm making a scene. She's 19 by the way and attending the reception. I know another cousin the same age as me is attending the reception, and I think Isabel's talked to other relatives about it. My fiance thinks I'm okay though, so was I the jerk asking to return the plates? I think it's pretty clear that they just didn't want OP around. I mean, do you have to be a drinker to go to that reception? I think OP's in the right here. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my friend she can't bring her baby to my birthday celebration? I'm turning 25 in February and was planning a weekend girls trip to Chicago. I have a friend who's about to give birth any day now and our birthdays are 10 days apart. I was hesitant to invite her in the first place since she's about to give birth, but another friend let slip about my party. So she basically asked if she could come along too. I said sure, and then she said she would have to bring baby girl along. Now on this trip, I was hoping to cross a bucket list item off my list. Taking edibles and going to an aquarium while in Chicago, finishing the night off with Korean barbecue and drinking. An environment I wasn't comfortable having a baby around. My friend doesn't see the problem with bringing her 2-month-old along at all. Everyone agrees with me the baby shouldn't come with. My friends say that since I don't have kids, I shouldn't have a say in how she raises her baby. Am I the jerk? This just sounds like two 25-year-olds who are in vastly different parts of their lives. One is already in motherhood and one is still kind of sounding like they're in their figuring themselves out phase. Either way, I don't think a 2-month-old should be around that. This next story is, am I the jerk for giving my sister a cheap gift for her wedding and not a necklace I myself own? I'm 23-year-old female. My sister, 27-year-old female, got married a month ago. And the wedding was beautiful and clearly very costly. They had a registry, but almost everything was really expensive. Think Dyson purifier, Fornasetti candles, etc. She also had a Tiffany alphabet necklace on it. I wear the same necklace, which my husband gifted to me for our wedding last year. I didn't ask for anything and I know he saved up. Tiffany jewelry is absolutely not the regular standard for us. There was an option to give a monetary gift towards the honeymoon, so we ended up gifting $150, and I think it was more than fair. The sister brought up that she noticed I only gave a small contribution to the honeymoon. I said yes, that's the gift. She replied she expected family to be more generous, and other siblings and relatives got thoughtful gifts. I could have at least gotten the Tiffany necklace since we can afford it. I told her, no, we can't afford it, and we gave what we could give. It's not my fault everything on the registry was so expensive. This was at Thanksgiving, by the way. There were other people around, and I guess they could see the conversation between us was getting heated. My sister said I need to stop acting so self-righteous, and they can put whatever they want on the registry. And others got gifts, so it's just me being cheap. My stepmom overheard and said I could have given a larger monetary amount or split the cost of the necklace with someone else. and I didn't appreciate the effort put into the wedding. I didn't think I was in the wrong here, Reddit, but I'm kind of doubting myself. I guess we could have given more money considering this is family. Am I the jerk? Even if OP did give an amount that was lower than you would expect, which I don't think they necessarily did, it is so ugly to go and harass somebody because they didn't give you enough money. This next story is, am I the jerk for no longer responding to my friend's medical emergencies? I, 30-year-old female, have been friends with my friend Mary, 27-year-old female, for roughly 5 years. We are completely different people who met at work, and somehow became pretty close friends. 3 years into our friendship, Mary started becoming sick. No one really knew what was going on, but it all escalated into her passing out at work and needing an ambulance to get to a hospital. I could sense she was scared because she didn't know what was wrong with her. I took it extremely seriously and stood by her side through it all. Whenever she texted or called me because of her medical emergency, aka her being scared to collapse or faint randomly, I would immediately answer and go see her. I spent many days by her side and often spent all day accompanying her until her husband or a direct family member took over. This all went on for roughly a year until she was finally diagnosed with severe anxiety and a panic disorder. She did get it treated through therapy and returned to a new normal, being able to do things alone again. In the meantime, my life had changed drastically. I found a new job, met my now husband, and we moved into our own place. Naturally, we hadn't seen and spoken much during that time because I was so busy. Anyway, I found out that Mary's condition had gotten worse recently when she called to see me in the middle of the night, asking me to accompany her until her husband would be back from work. I did go to see her, and upon asking her why therapy was no longer helping, she claimed she quit therapy because she wanted to get through it on her own. I asked her if her family knew, but she said she didn't want to worry them, so they don't know. Her husband knows. Well, her calls became more frequent again, but this time it was hard for me to just leave everything and be there for her. At first, I was there for her again, but with time, I just didn't have the energy to do so anymore. Her requests became irrational and more demanding. And while I have sympathy for her and her condition, I see no point in putting up with it if she's refusing proper medical help, let alone from her immediate family. I started making up excuses why I couldn't help her at certain times. It all boiled down to last Thursday, where I got a message from her at 4 a.m. asking me to take her to her parents' place because she was having a medical emergency. I saw the message, but I ignored it because I just couldn't take it anymore. In fact, I ghosted her and went back to sleep. The next day, I pretended to have slept through her text and found out she'd managed to stay at home until her husband got there. But she didn't fail to make me feel bad for ignoring her messages. She's been giving me the cold shoulder since. I know she's mad I didn't answer or help her when she needed me. I do feel guilty, but I thought if it was really an emergency, she should call an ambulance. So, Reddit, am I the jerk for ignoring my friend during another of her medical emergencies? I think OP's honestly done more than a lot of people would. The realistic fact is not everybody can just be 24/7 drop of a dime. But not only that, but also continue to just keep putting up with it. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my self-centered cousin that her kid couldn't have my Squishmallows? Me, 24-year-old female, has a cousin, 21-year-old female, who has a daughter, 7-year-old female, who's always been a little self-centered. She always thinks that her and her family are the most perfect family who deserves anything. I collect these little stuffed animals called Squishmallows that are very popular with kids, and I have a lot of them. This Monday, our family had our annual Christmas party, and my cousin and her kid came. Her kid automatically saw my Squishmallow collection, as you could see inside my bedroom door when you walk through the front door. The first thing she said to me was, "Can I see your stuffies?" And I wasn't going to be rude, so I let her. She kept on repeating the same phrase. I wish I had Squishmallows, but I kinda ignored it. She spent her whole time glaring at me and my Squishmallows, as if she was mad or something. When it was time to leave, I saw my cousin's kid crying and my cousin walked up to me. I can't remember exactly what she said, but it was something along the lines of, "Look, you have so many Squishmallows and my daughter has none. So can you give her like 5? And I said, "No, sorry, I've been building this collection for a while and I can't just give it away." She scoffed and walked out with her kid. Since then, I've been getting so many calls from family that I'm the jerk and say that I should have just given her the stuffed animals. Am I in the wrong? I think OP is definitely not in the wrong. I don't really care what the item is. If you're collecting it for yourself, you don't owe it to give it away to anybody. This next story is, am I the jerk for being a brat about not wanting garlic in my food? So I, 18-year-old female, just got back from college for winter break and this situation happened. So I want to know if I'm in the wrong. Me and my parents don't get along. I was a good kid and got good grades, but we started fighting a lot when I was in high school. Long story short, I went to a college 4 states away to get away from the family. My sister, 15, was the one to suggest it. Anyways, I've been back for about a week now, and my mom makes this extremely good chicken pot pie. It basically takes all day to make, and it's one of my favorite meals. I hate garlic. I don't know why, but I refuse to eat anything if I can smell it in the food. My mom's making the chicken pot pie, and I walked into the kitchen and could smell the garlic. I made the comment, "Wow, gone for a few months and you forgot you hate garlic." She just said, "Wow, it's like you don't cook and don't know what's in your food. The pasta I made 2 days ago had garlic in it and you loved that." This started an argument. I was mad that she could hold off on the garlic when I'm here and that she tricked me into eating it. The argument continues and she called me a brat that can cook her own food from now on. My sister heard the whole thing and basically said that I'm the jerk and that I'm the problem in the house, not our parents. So am I the jerk or problem? I mean, I get if you don't want to eat something that has garlic overload in it, but this isn't like feeding a vegetarian meat. You got called out because you enjoyed something you said, "Oh, I never liked that ingredient." This next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to pay for my son's dental surgery? I'm divorced from my son's mom, and she took the easy way out on financial arrangements. Basically, I got stuck with paying things that are certain, like our son's private school and extracurricular activities, where she's responsible for their health insurance and medical bills and their nanny. She doesn't pay much for coverage, and our sons don't need medical care until now. Our 8-year-old super cute son has a tooth growing from the roof of his mouth, and it needs to be removed quickly. It's not a simple procedure because he needs to be put under anesthesia and we have to go to a pediatric oral surgeon. Most oral surgeons will not do the procedure on a child. We eventually found a very good pediatric oral surgeon and it's going to come out to be $3,000. It's that much because dental insurance doesn't cover much and an anesthesiologist is expensive. It had to be paid half for an appointment and half the day of the appointment. My ex asked me if I was going half. I said, "Nope. The bill's your problem, not mine. This is what you wanted, remember? You spent the last few years with so little childcare expenses that you got used to it." She went on to say that she doesn't have that kind of cash laying around, and it doesn't make sense to put it on a credit card with interest rates. I told her to go sell blood. I don't care, and yes, I actually budget my money and could pay all of it, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. She ended up having to take a loan from her credit union to pay for the surgery. Our son was always going to have his surgery, and there was no delay. It might be a little controversial to some, but I think OP's not the jerk. They had an agreement, and now that it's expensive, she's trying to renege. OP said they wouldn't let their son go without the procedure if they had to. They're not just willingly bailing somebody out when there was an agreement. Our next story is, am I the jerk for taking an Uber to a wedding so I wouldn't be late? My sister got married last weekend. I flew into town and my parents insisted that I stay with them instead of a hotel like I wanted. My parents are consistently late for everything. I think it's a Latin thing. I hate being late. I think it's disrespectful. The wedding was at 2:30. My folks live about half an hour from the church. Noon rolls up and my folks aren't even getting ready yet. They're adults and I'm over dealing with them. I get ready, I send for an Uber, and I'm at the church for 2 o'clock. I check in with my sister. She asks me if I had any problems with getting my parents to church. I told her that I came by myself. She went white and said that I was responsible for getting them there on time. Well, nobody asked me to do that. I didn't even want to stay there. So now everyone starts calling my parents. They're getting ready. They were about 35 minutes late. The service was shortened because there was another wedding later that day. Everyone is still mad at me for not getting my parents there on time. My aunt said that I'm a jerk for messing up the timing of the wedding. My mom says it's my fault for not reminding them to get ready. Am I the only one who thinks adults should be able to be on time for their own kid's wedding without help? OP wasn't enlisted with this responsibility. They could have prevented it, but they aren't playing parent babysitter. Our next story is, am I the jerk telling my niece she can leave after she went against the rules in my home, which she was staying in rent-free? I'm 30, my husband's 34, and Amy is 22. Our niece Amy, my husband's half-brother's daughter, stayed at our home recently for almost 2 weeks. Amy had exam season at college. Her school's a bit of a drive from where she lives, and she would be losing a lot of studying time going back and forth. So she asked if she could stay with us as we're nearby. She didn't pay any type of rent, but did reimburse the increase in utilities. She offered to pay for the utilities, by the way. We didn't ask her to. We agreed because this was for an educational purpose, and I made it very clear to her that she couldn't be using this time for socializing, mingling with friends, and so on. Amy agreed to everything. Last week, I came home from work and saw Amy's husband in the kitchen. He'd come with a report she left at home. I asked her what was going on. She said she made him coffee since he made the trip, and he's only here for 30 minutes. I reminded Amy that we allowed her to stay here to make her studies easier, not so she can be bringing men over. I've also discussed this with her beforehand and she agreed, but now she's going against it. Amy started acting snarky. So I replied that she needs to respect other people's houses and rules, otherwise she can leave. She got upset and was quiet the rest of the time, but she did end up leaving a few days early. My husband said Amy should have respected the rules, but I was too harsh on her. I did text her later, but she didn't reply, and she didn't pick up my husband's calls either. He did talk to his half-brother and they were pissed off, but I also told a couple of my family members about it, and they think I'm fine. Am I the jerk? I think OP was being weirdly uptight. Like, I get they're a guest in your house, you probably didn't want them over, but God forbid they bring some stranger man, their husband, over for 30 minutes. This next story is, am I the jerk for not giving my son's stepson money for university when I have for all my other grandkids? I have 3 kids. My husband and I worked hard to raise them and get them to be productive adults, and they are. I'm proud of all 3. They were great kids and have become pretty good adults if I do say so myself. When my oldest daughter married a widower who already had a 2-year-old child, my husband and I put money into an education fund. We did the same for every biological grandchild. We know a little bit about investing and compound interest. By starting early, we can invest a little bit each month. And by the time they graduate high school, we're able to provide each one with enough money for a good start in life. My oldest grandchild just graduated from high school. We were able to let them know that after scholarships and everything were taken into account, they would be graduating debt-free. We don't give any of them the money. We pay for tuition and fees and such. We learned our lesson from our youngest, our only son. We gave him the money like we had for his 2 older sisters. He had scholarships as well, but he blew through the money we gave him and chose to be a tradesperson instead. He does very well and now owns his own successful business. He was married, but it didn't work out. We have 2 grandkids from that marriage. Last year, he married a very nice woman who had a 15-year-old son. She had him very young, and it caused a rift in her family. None of them came to the wedding. My son approached us about money for his stepson's education. After my husband and I discussed it, we said that we could afford to give him $5,000 to help out, but that was it. My son was very disappointed. He knows that all my other grandkids have enough money in their accounts to pay for at least 2.5 years of in-state tuition and expenses. He makes good money, but he also likes to spend it on toys and vacations. I don't think that him or my daughter-in-law have anything put away for his stepson. That's why we offered the $5,000. My son and his wife are planning ahead for when he graduates in June, and they're still complaining that I'm treating him different from our other grandkids. I know that we are, but we didn't have almost 2 decades to save for him. That $5,000 came out of my fund for when I need to replace my car. Honestly, I think what OP and their husband offered is more than fair. I think considering how long they've even known the child, a lot of people would be hesitant to give anything at all. Our next story is, am I the jerk for exposing my coworkers' bathroom habits? I, 25-year-old female, work at a smaller company of about 15 people. I get along with pretty much everyone, with the exception of someone we'll call Alexis, 40-year-old female. Alexis is very socially conservative and I'm not. I do my best to not talk about things I know will cause an argument, but they sometimes happen anyway. One time, I used the bathroom right after the cleaning crew finished cleaning it and didn't bother putting the toilet seat down because I was just going to squat to pee. I washed my hands, and when I exited, I bumped straight into Alexis. I apologized and went on with my day. For the next 2 weeks, I thought Alexis was being particularly sanctimonious, but I didn't say anything as it wasn't too out of character. The subject of women's sports came up during lunch, and she made a snide comment along the lines of, "People like OP ruin them for everyone else." I was immediately confused. I've never been athletically inclined at any age, so I ask, "Do you mean tall people?" She says, "No, women that are still biologically men," she says with a glare. At the time, this came out of left field. I'm a cisgender woman. While I'm still a tomboy in my interests, I'm very physically feminine presenting. I said, "Okay, 1, there's nothing wrong with being transgender. 2, I'm not transgender. Why would you even say that?" She said, "You can't fool me. I saw you come out of the bathroom and the toilet seat was up." I stared in disbelief as she seemed convinced this was the biggest gotcha moment. She couldn't even hide her smug smile. I said, "I squatted, Alexis." The energy of the room was getting very awkward, so I decided to make a joke. "Are you telling me that you park your bare butt on the toilet seat in public restrooms?" She turned bright red. Apparently she did, because she started muttering something about not being weird before bursting into tears and leaving the room. My coworkers think it was rude of me to expose her like that, but I don't think I did anything wrong for trying to defuse a situation she put herself in. Am I the jerk? Her very clear bias and transphobia makes this more than easy to not feel like the jerk. I mean, they tried to put OP completely on blast. That said, our final story of the day is, am I the jerk for telling my brother he messed up my childhood too? This is going to take a load of explaining, so just bear with me while I try to give you the short version. I, 23-year-old female, was basically brought up by my brother Lev, 31. He was always the one who took care of me, made sure I was safe, fed, and happy. My mom left us when I was 3 years old to escape my narcissistic, abusive, pathetic excuse of a father, Lev's stepdad. Then, 6 years later, my dad finally drinks and smokes enough to die of a stroke. Lev fights for custody of me, wins, and we move into a small apartment together. At this point, he's 18 and I'm 10, and Lev continues taking good care of me until things go to crap. He starts drinking, loses his job, some bad things happen, and I get taken away and put into a home. Lev and I stay in contact until I'm 14, when I find out that he's been in contact with our mom ever since she left. And nobody ever wanted to tell me because I was too young to understand. I'm furious and cut contact with him. Both he and my mom try to contact me several times, but I refuse to talk to them. I decided to contact him again when I was 19, and we've been fixing our relationship ever since. He stopped drinking, has a lovely wife and a baby on the way. I've been talking to my mom as well, and we're also in the process of fixing our relationship with a lot of therapy. I'm deeply grateful for everything Lev's done for me. I know how much he had on his shoulders back then, being so young himself and trying to raise me. Despite everything, he's truly my best friend. On the other side, I can't deny how much everything that happened messed me up. I'm still healing deep scars from my traumatic childhood. The other day, Lev and I were talking on Skype about my dad and a couple other things that happened. He basically says, "That jerk really ruined both our lives completely. Everything was his fault." I wanted to agree with him, but like I said, I feel that some things were his fault as well. I must have had a weird look on my face because he asks, "What?" And I tell him, "Well, Dad really was a jerk and he did some awful things. But some of the stuff you did really screwed up my childhood too." His face goes blank and he stops talking. After a few seconds, he says, "I tried my best, you know. It wasn't easy for me either." I tell him quickly I know that, and I'll never forget everything he did for me. He says, "But you still think I screwed up your childhood?" And before I could answer, he hangs up the call. He hasn't answered any of my messages or calls. I don't know if what I said was over the line, but I feel like I need to speak my truth as well. Am I the jerk? Edit, because so many people raise this point. I blame my parents way more than anyone else in the situation. Also, this truly wasn't about blaming anyone. It was simply a comment I intended to make in a conversation. A stupid, insensitive, and unnecessary comment, and not one made to blame my brother for what happened. I just want to say thank you to the people who took the time to comment your constructive thoughts and criticisms. I wasn't expecting this much thoughtfulness or insight, and I appreciate the perspective most of you had to offer. I'm really touched. A lot of people mention therapy. All of us, Lev, my mom, and I, are in therapy. We have separate therapists, but Lev and I go to the same office. I have a session once a month with Lev and a session once every 3 months with my mom. He has the same. I called Lev an hour ago and I'm now at his place. I apologized to him, told him how much I know how much he sacrificed for me to have a better life, and that I see his pain and how much he struggled. He told me he understands my feelings too. He understands what he put me through, that I came into contact with a lot of things that no child should ever have to see because of certain choices. He intends to work on himself for the sake of our relationship and for his child. He obviously doesn't want history to repeat itself. I'm thinking of planning a surprise weekend trip with him to a mountain range close to where we live. We used to go rock climbing there and it's a happy place for both of us. I want to have a good time with him there and maybe take the time to talk about a few things. Mostly, I just want to show him again how sorry I am and how much I appreciate him. By and large, a lot of people in the comments said that OP was the jerk for what they initially said. Overall, to me, I think this sounds like a just very complicated, touchy subject situation. And honestly, I think the main thing to keep in mind here is Lev tried their best with what they had, and that nobody can really be truly infallible. Am I the jerk for not changing my tradition day to my daughter-in-law and making things uncomfortable? I have a tradition that every June and December, on the first Saturday of the month, I make a traditional dish from my country for my family and friends. Everyone loves it and it's a family recipe. My youngest son's been married to Wendy for 3 years, together one before. I didn't know her that well because they didn't live here. Wendy is a rising chef. In June, Wendy asked if she could help me make the dish, and I said yes. It was my biggest regret. She gave advice on all of the seasoning choices, and even though I said it's a family recipe, she kept giving her opinion. When that date passed, I made it clear that I wouldn't like any more help, the first and last time. She took it personally and our relationship became uncomfortable. Last month, day 16, I received an invitation from my son and Wendy to go to their house, because Wendy was going to make this dish. It was the first Sunday in December. To clarify, this dish isn't something you can eat 2 days in a row, as it's heavy. Some people sent me a message asking if mine would still happen. They always know it was always the first Saturday, and I confirmed. On the 20th, I sent the formal invitation by message. My son called as soon as he received it, asking if it would be on the first Saturday, and I confirmed, and he started saying that people can't eat 2 days in a row, and if I couldn't leave it for another week, because Wendy wanted to do it to get closer to the family. I said no, as it's my tradition, and despite finding their choice of date unpleasant, I won't stop them, but I'll continue with the usual dates. He proceeded to say I'm making things uncomfortable, and a week later wouldn't bother me, and tried to use the fact that her invite was sent out before mine. I was perplexed and said that everyone knows it's the first Saturday of the month, including them, so it wouldn't change my plans. Things got uncomfortable, of course, but I kept it because it's something that doesn't just involve me. Friends and family already confirmed. There was a party on Saturday with friends and family. He and Wendy didn't come, and on Sunday I didn't go because I worked that day. Many didn't come, and those who did, few ate the food because they couldn't eat twice. During the week, my son sent a message asking if it was worth it to have done that and upset her, because it spoiled this moment that she wanted to have with our family. He stressed that I could have been the best person, but I preferred not to be. I don't think this attack is very fair, but I wanted an outside opinion. It was the best date for all of my family and friends in December as they get together before the festivities. For me too. A tradition that's been going on for 10 years. Considering this is a very well-established tradition, to me it seemed like something the girl enjoyed and was trying to bite off. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting to decide whether or not every single person here are jerks, why not hit that subscribe button down below? Our next story is, am I the jerk for asking my daughter for help? I'm 54 and my daughter's 28. She's home on break from grad school getting her PhD. She's only home for 2 weeks because she says she doesn't have any more time, even though she has a month break. That's been a big thing with her lately. She's constantly too busy to do things with us or help us out, even though she does have the time. I got my younger daughter a sweater, and it turns out she already has it. I called my older daughter from work on Friday and told her she needed to run and exchange it for a different one. She said okay, she would do it the next day. I said it needed to be done that day to get the best options. And she said she was grading, so she can't. I told her it's not like she can't pause her grading, run out and exchange it. She said she wasn't going to slow down her work and just said that I should do it when I got back from work that day. I said I was too busy to and didn't feel like running out after a long day of work. And she said neither did she. But she doesn't have a long day of work. She's sitting on her butt on her computer all day and doesn't even have scheduled hours to work. She can do it whenever she wants. Today, things really kicked off because I needed her to pick up an online order for a gift for my mom, her grandma. She again used the excuse of grading. She hadn't even started working yet. It was in the morning and she was drinking coffee and having breakfast. She said that she needs to have her grades done by today, but I looked it up on the website and she has till Monday evening. So I called her on her BS, and she said she had other work due on Monday. So she needed to get the grading done today, but wouldn't enlighten me on what this mysterious other work is. I said, well, tough. This needs to be picked up today so I can wrap it, and I was going into the office, so I couldn't do it. She said that if I don't want to do it myself, then it'll be done on her own time. I told her with that attitude she can stay somewhere else, and she said happily, and packed her things, claiming she didn't want to stay here anyway, but was only doing so because I insisted. She left her gifts and said not to expect her for the holidays, and she'll go to her girlfriend's family instead. I think it's ridiculous that she's throwing a fit just because she can't constantly live like she's the only person on the planet. But my wife and other daughter are now furious with me, so I figured I'd ask here, because my younger daughter is always reading these stories with me. Am I the jerk, or am I correct that my daughter is self-centered and childish? I just think if you're 28 and have your own responsibilities, I just don't think it's appropriate to try to assume that I'm your dad, I can still say what you can and can't do role. What do you guys think? Was Opie the jerk? Our next story is, am I the jerk for letting my son get fast food and bring it into a wedding reception? My son, 22-year-old male, is a picky eater. My cousin was getting married and had a lovely reception with a nice buffet. Johnny wasn't a fan of what was served, so I let him leave and get some food. Word spread amongst our family where he was going, and a few people asked him to bring things back, so he did. We're at a table near the dance floor, and you could probably smell it, but nobody in our immediate family had a problem, even the bride and groom. Apparently the venue and the family of the bride were appalled, and I don't understand why. It was a great party, but he wanted something different, and other people did too. So am I the jerk? I think if you go to a reception and you go and pick some food up elsewhere mid-reception, you're definitely pushing it. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not letting the surrogate family touch my stomach and feel the baby move? So I, 24-year-old female, am currently 6 months pregnant as a surrogate for a family. Everything's been smooth sailing for the most part throughout this process, other than one thing. Even when I was pregnant with my daughter, I could not stand people touching my stomach. I don't understand the obsession with people touching pregnant bellies, but it bothers me when people try to do it. Anyways, the family I'm surrogating for has asked multiple times if they can touch my stomach or rub it and feel the baby move and kick. The wife stating that she's always wanted to experience feeling the kicking and moving baby. Now, for context, she can fully have children of her own. This surrogacy is a choice they made, so as to not interfere with her career by being pregnant. She has a physically demanding job and doesn't want to risk anything happening to the baby or her career. She's a personal trainer. They've been constantly asking me to touch my stomach, and I always politely decline as it's uncomfortable for me. Well, while me and my wife were at a baby appointment last week, she reached over and rubbed my stomach while talking to the doctor. I kindly asked her to stop touching my stomach, and she snapped at me and said I was ruining the experience for her, and it's her baby, she should really be able to feel her kick. I snapped back and said that it may be her baby, but it's my body, and that if she really wanted to feel her baby kick, she should have gotten pregnant herself. I've gotten calls from her and her husband calling me the jerk for yelling at her for bonding with her child. My friends and parents are split on whether or not I'm the jerk, since it is their baby. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Surrogate or not, your body, your rules. This next story is, am I the jerk for suing my father for the damage done to my house by his dogs? I'm female 31. My mom passed away last year. My dad, 56, married a woman, 37, with a son, 16 years old, about 6 months later. I think the age difference is a bit much, but she's nearly 40, so it's not like he's robbing the cradle. Whenever my parents went away, I would always watch their dogs. They weren't the dogs that I grew up with, but they are good puppies. My mom would always call and let me know well in advance when they were going away, and that I would make sure that either myself or my boyfriend would be around pretty quick after the pups got dropped off. They could behave themselves for a few hours, and I'd leave water out for them. I don't have any pets myself. My work can involve travel, and my boyfriend works out of town for 2 weeks and then has 2 weeks off. Well, my dad and his new wife decided to go on a trip, but since it was never his responsibility, he didn't call. I was out of town, my boyfriend was working, my dad has a key to my house for emergencies and dropping off the dogs. My neighbor called me a day later about the dogs howling in my house to see if everything was okay. I called my dad, and he told me that he didn't know I was out of town. I said that if he didn't come get them, I was calling animal control. So he had his new stepson come to my house to get the dogs. I have no idea why a 16-year-old kid who was trusted to stay home by himself could not have just watched the dogs in the first place. When I got home, I found a disaster area. Dog poo and pee everywhere. I don't want to describe everything because it makes me angry. To get everything that could be clean done and to replace my boyfriend's leather recliner, which was old but also destroyed, cost about $7,000. I told my dad I expected him to pay for everything. He said that he would see if his homeowner's insurance would cover it. They will, but the deductible is a lot, and his premiums will go up. So he said that he'll take care of it. It's been a few months and I'm sick of waiting. The limit for small claims court in my state is more than double what I want. So, I'm suing him. He was served and called me to complain. He doesn't have the money because he just bought a new car. He bought the car after my house got destroyed. I feel no pity. But his wife and him keep trying to talk me out of pursuing this. They said that my dad paid for a good chunk of my student debt and that I owe him. Him and my mom did pay off about $10,000 of my student debt, and I was grateful. It's one of the reasons I had no problem dog sitting for free. But he says that if I take this money, then he won't have money for things at his house. He isn't retired, and my mom had life insurance. They may try to emotionally manipulate you however they can, but the fact here is they screwed up and screwed you over hardcore, and I think it's imperative you can't let yourself feel guilty for claiming that money. Our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to eat at my husband's family dinner? This year, my husband, 36-year-old male, and his extended family decided to go to a fancy restaurant to celebrate the holidays. For context, as it's relevant to the situation, I, 30-year-old female, am a white woman, whilst my husband and his family are first or second generation East and Southeast Asian. When we originally made plans, we agreed on a local higher-end chain spot that we'd been to many times in the past. However, the day before, my mother-in-law sent us a message that her brother had switched spots to another high-end Chinese restaurant. I had never been there, but I didn't really care and was happy to go. We regularly eat and sometimes make home-cooked traditional Chinese food anyways, so there was no issue. So we pack up our son, 1-year-old, and meet his family at this new restaurant. It was mostly nice, but one thing struck me immediately. The restaurant heavily advertised and displayed its shark fin soup menu, to the point that there were some fins literally hanging on display. In our country, the sale of shark fins is illegal. It's also known to be extremely cruel. Basically, the fin is removed from living sharks. and the animal is left to slowly die, unable to swim, and ecologically a key reason for some at-risk shark species population declines. Everyone sat down, and I was noticeably quiet. I quickly pulled my husband to the side to explain that I was really uncomfortable with this restaurant, as it sold shark fin, and tried to figure out what to do. I was really anxious given the illegality of the dish and morally upset. He said we could talk about it when we got home, but to please just get through the dinner. When it came time to order, a lot of the aunts and uncles ordered shark fin soup, while everyone else ordered fancy dishes. Internally, I was still freaking out and quickly just chose the plainest possible noodle dish, basically noodles with oil, and said I would share it with my son. I got some weird looks from my mother-in-law and brother-in-law since they know I regularly love Chinese food. And this wouldn't be my typical order. The food arrives, and I cut up and give some of the noodles to my son. He still needs to eat, and really just pick at the rest while we're there. There's a lot of food sharing, but I wouldn't participate, and also blocked my son from participating. Some family made comments on my and my son's not sharing, but I just laughed them off or changed the subject. There wasn't any conflict while we were at the restaurant, and I tried to hide my discomfort and hold happier conversations with everyone there. When we got home, my husband asked if I was feeling well and why I hadn't eaten more food. I told him I was uncomfortable eating shark fin and didn't want to eat at the restaurant that supported eating shark fin, and I didn't want our son eating there either. He got angry and said I was embarrassing him, and I guess called a couple family members. Now I have a bunch of them messaging me saying I'm racist and I'm stealing my son's culture from him. Am I the jerk for not sucking it up and eating at the restaurant? In high school, I had a marine science class. In it, we watched a film called The Cove, which heavily covered illegal dolphin hunting and killing, which was very similar and even mentioned stuff about sharks and shark fin soup. If you've seen these things and you know and you're aware of these practices that are happening, especially shark fin soup, you would hopefully know better than to ever support that. It's illegal for a reason. This next story is, am I the jerk for not trying to convince my parents to treat all their grandchildren equally? I, 47, got divorced from my first wife when I was 29. We had 2 kids and my folks loved them more than anything. My ex-wife wasn't happy with the lifestyle that I could provide. I wasn't making a lot of money, but we weren't in debt or anything. We had good cars and we had just put a down payment on our first home that we would own. Her boss was rich, he was 47, and he could provide luxuries that were out of my reach. She left me for him. I still had to pay child support, but I guess I was lucky that I didn't pay spousal support. I had to work and I couldn't get custody. I got visitation, and my ex made it hard. The kids were young and she manipulated them. If I had planned to take them to a local resort for our summer vacation, she would take them to Disneyland the week before. I would always come up short. Eventually, the kids refused to spend time with me. It went to court, and I basically had to accept that I couldn't force them to see me and my parents. I met my second wife, 33, at the dog park when I was 37 and she was 24. She had a son who was about the age my son was the last time my parents got to see him. My parents accepted him right away. He loves them. My wife is like a daughter to them. It's what I always wanted for our life. We have 2 more kids now, 8 and 5. My stepson's about to graduate next year. So a few years ago, my dad sold his company. He's an engineer and he had some patents that ended up being worth a fair bit of money. He paid off my house. He also made educational funds for my 3 kids. He figured the older ones were done with school and hadn't bothered to visit them in years, so they didn't need anything from him. Turns out that was wrong. My ex-wife married a scam artist. He was rich, but he wasn't rich enough for the lifestyle she wanted, so he stole from his clients. And then he went to jail. My oldest kids are in a lot of debt. My ex is living with her parents. She recently tried to tell me that my parents needed to be fair with all their grandchildren. I told her it was their money to spend on the people they loved and who loved them back. She said that we were punishing her kids for her mistakes. I said that both of our kids were adults and hadn't made any effort to see me or my parents in over a decade. She said I'm being a jerk for not convincing my parents to help her kids. You spend that time instilling them to avoid these people, They do avoid those people, but you still want them to donate hand over fist to you? Doesn't work like that. Our next story is, am I the jerk for prioritizing my dog over my mom's stepchild? I, female 32, have a 12-year-old American bully named Rory. Because of her age, she had a lot of health issues. Right now, she needs to have surgery. It's going to be around $6,000 plus $3,000 to $4,000 in meds, followed by 6 months in therapy. That's going to be $10,000 to $12,000. That brings the total to $22,000 at the most. I can easily afford it because I have a good job in IT, I don't have any debt to pay, I'm child-free, and I budget myself very well. My mom is what you would call a weekend parent. She never really mothered me. She would often let me fend for myself. Because of that, my childhood was practically non-existent. My dad died when I was 2, and my grandparents lived far away, so I was by myself 99% of the time. I went low contact with her when I started college. Last year, she got married to Alex, who has a 5-year-old son, David, from a previous relationship. I wasn't aware of this. I didn't know she was dating, and I didn't know she got married. Mom called me last night because David has some health issues and needs medical care that's too expensive for their budget. That's when I found out about Alex. Apparently my mom didn't tell me anything because if I knew about Alex, she would have been forced to invite me to the wedding, which she didn't want to do because Alex doesn't know I exist. Basically, she wants me to send her $15,000 to pay for David's treatment or whatever he needs. I said no. I'm doing well financially, but I don't have that kind of money and I'm not paying for a random kid. I told mom as nice as I could that I can't help her because 1, I don't want to, and 2, I don't have the money. She ended the call. She found out about Rory's surgery from my cousin, and this morning I woke up to a bunch of voicemails and texts calling me all possible names because I chose my dog over her stepkid. I texted back, yes, that dog means the world to me and I will do anything I can for her. David is nothing to me. You got married without telling me because you don't want your hubby to know I exist. Perfect. If I don't exist in your perfect little life, then why are you asking me for money? Your stepchild isn't my responsibility. I wouldn't give you $15,000 even if I had it, because you're not important enough to me to spare that kind of money. You haven't called me in what, 3 years? 4? And now you want money from me? Nah. Safe to say my family's now calling me a monster because I would rather help a dog than a child. My decision is final, but I'm curious if I'm the jerk. They tried to pretend you didn't exist. You don't owe them money. Our next story is, am I the jerk? My wife demands I remove taxidermy for her sister's visit. I'm very into deer hunting, and I have 2 mounted deer heads in my basement. My wife doesn't like taxidermy and brings it up quite a bit. One is in a living room and the other's in my workout room that doubles as a guest room. Her sister's coming to town for the holidays, and my wife insists I remove the deer head so her sister's comfortable. I refused since I use the room every day and I get a great memory every time I walk in that room. I don't feel like I need to take down or adjust things for my sister-in-law. She doesn't have to stay at our house. I've offered to change the sheets, etc., so my wife doesn't need to go in that room. I think it's easy and simple enough to temporarily move it. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not giving our granddaughter the same wedding gift as our other grandchildren? I, 70s female, am the grandmother to 5 wonderful grandkids, 3 women and 2 men. The last of my grandkids got married last October. My husband, 70s male, and I usually get them a small gift, usually the cheapest thing on the registry. Then the day before the wedding, we privately gift them a check for $40,000. We prefer that they use it for a house, but we don't force them to do so. We also ask them to keep it private. We have a big extended family and we don't want them to expect it from us. They all honored this request. When it came to our youngest granddaughter, we bought her an air fryer. That was the cheapest thing on the registry and sent it in advance. Then she called us furious. She went off on us for being cheap and how she knew we had money, but that we didn't love her enough to show it by getting her something more expensive. We were horrified by her behavior. Then she went ahead and threatened to disinvite us if we didn't get her a better gift. We discussed it, bought her a china set, but we didn't give her the money that was set aside for her. We decided that she didn't deserve it. Fast forward to last week, she met up with her brother, They got to talking, and she found out about the cash gift that he got. She asked her cousins and found out all of them got the same gift. She called us furious for discriminating against her. We told her that it was our money, and after how she behaved, we didn't want to give it to her. She started crying, said that she was just extremely stressed and that we shouldn't have taken it to heart. We told her that we stand by our decision. Now she's refusing to attend Christmas, and her mother, our daughter-in-law, is calling us jerks. So are we the jerks? Definitely not. Who's going to get yelled at for not spending enough money on them and still want to give them thousands of dollars? Even if they were extremely stressed, that doesn't justify calling somebody up and saying, hey, your gift wasn't splashy enough. Our next story is, am I the jerk for getting my stepsister and her family banned from Christmas? I have a daughter, Elena, 6, and my stepsister Jess has a daughter, Hattie, 5. Me, my husband, Jess, and her husband, Paul, are all staying at our parents' house over the Xmas period. For context, Paul arrived a day after the rest of us, very late at night because he does shift work and worked late before driving to our parents'. The next morning, the girls were playing in Elena's room at about 10 a.m. The adults were all downstairs, except Paul because he was sleeping and my stepdad was out. Suddenly, we heard Paul shouting. This isn't too unusual, if unpleasant, but this episode sounded particularly bad, so we got up. Before we can even get up to the stairs, my daughter runs down crying, saying Paul had shouted at her for waking him up. My husband was livid and went upstairs to deal with Paul while I calmed my daughter down. I knew it would be absolutely impossible for us to be around Paul after what happened, so we would probably be leaving. Jess said that was ridiculous. Paul probably got annoyed and was tired and he'd apologize and everything would be fine. I said no, it would not be fine. Nobody shouts at my child and remains on speaking terms with me or around my daughter. Paul should know better than to be acting like that with other people's children. When my stepdad came back, we told him what happened and that we would be leaving because we refused to subject Elena to being around Paul after what he did, and we don't trust him to not overstep his boundaries like that again. My stepdad agreed, but said that it was unfair that we should have to leave after Paul was the problem. He called Paul and Jess down and said they had to go, weren't welcome on Christmas or until after we had gone home. Paul tried to defend himself, saying the kids should have been quieter, but when my husband got annoyed, Paul half-heartedly apologized. I didn't believe a word of his apology. My stepdad reiterated that Jess was welcome to stay without Paul, but Paul had to be gone within the hour. Jess started crying and said it was unfair and that my stepdad was choosing me over her and was a horrible father. She started an expletive rant, so I left the room with Elena, and the next I saw was her and Paul going upstairs to pack. They left without a goodbye. Since they've been gone, every few hours I've gotten a text from Jess saying how I've ruined her Christmas and her relationship with her dad over 30 seconds of bad judgment. I don't think I created this situation because it was my stepdad's decision to throw them out. I offered to leave. I also think Paul made this bed that Jess is lying in. All he had to do was come downstairs and ask us to quiet the children or pop his head in the room and ask politely. Nevertheless, I do feel bad that Jess is stuck in the middle and that Hattie won't see her grandparents on Christmas because of this. Did I overreact? Would Paul apologizing have been enough? I don't think OP's the jerk here. You don't treat kids like that regardless. And I hope they don't treat Hattie like that. That said, our final story of the day is, am I the jerk for requesting that my wife cleans up after herself? I, 28-year-old male, married my wife, 23-year-old female, who we'll call Danny, about a year ago, and we were very lucky to get pregnant soon after. Danny's in her 3rd trimester now and on pregnancy leave. Once we got the good news, I started working extra hours in order to save more money for when the baby gets here. This means that I have to get up extra early every morning to get to work. I try to be out the door by 6 a.m. I get home a little later and I'm usually pretty beat, but I still contribute to the house by doing dishes, cleaning up after the cat cause she can't, that kind of stuff. This new routine has been hard on both of us, but we've made it work, and so far everything's been fine. That is, until the other day when I wake up to Danny crying. We only have one bathroom, which is downstairs, and lately Danny's been having a little more trouble going up and down the stairs. This usually went fine, but this time she didn't make it. So when I came downstairs, I found her in tears, standing in her own mess. She was clearly very embarrassed, and even more so that I caught her. I immediately felt bad for her and tried to comfort her and told her it's all good. It can happen to anyone. Just clean it up and we'll go back to bed. She asked me if I could help her, but I told her that it made me uncomfortable. I would never expect anyone to clean up after my mess. To be honest, it's happened before when I had a couple too many beers, but I always clean up after myself, and it would feel weird to ask Danny to do it for me in that situation. She got really mad and called me insensitive for making her clean up after herself after an already embarrassing enough situation. I proposed a compromise. She would clean up the mess, and I would get her clean PJs, since I'd just done the laundry anyway. She asked me if this was what it was going to be like if the baby made a mess, and I told her I would be perfectly okay to clean up after the baby since it can't clean up after itself. I then told her I didn't have time to stand there arguing with her all night when I had to get up in like 3 hours to go to work and provide for us. So I walked upstairs, grabbed her PJs for her, and went back to bed. The next morning when I got downstairs, I found her on the couch. She told me that she barely slept and felt horrible about the night before. She called me a jerk and said that by not helping her, I only embarrassed her more. She then told me that she would be staying with her mom until I got my crap together. It's been half a day now and she's not responding to my texts. I talked about it with a few coworkers and I'm getting mixed responses. But I just want to make sure. Am I the jerk? 100% the jerk for not helping out your pregnant wife, even if they made a mess of themselves. Am I the jerk for refusing to babysit on Christmas? I, 21-year-old female, am the babysitter for a family. I've been their babysitter since March. They're a great family, treat me well and pay me well. I wrote down a list of days I'm unable to work the entire year, and for however long they need me. The days are my birthday, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and November 16th. They said that these days were fine, and for those days they can get someone to stand in. Well, on Sunday, they messaged asking if I could babysit their 3 kids, 12-year-old male, 9-year-old male, and 3-year-old female, on Christmas Day from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. I asked if they were joking, and they said no. They said that every other person they've asked have also said no, to which I replied, well, they would because it's Christmas Day. They began to beg and said that they would offer me $50 more than they would any other day. Again, I responded no. The days I've strictly given them are the days that I want off so I can spend time with my friends and family. And Christmas is the only day my family can get together and spend time with each other. Not only that, but the family would be wanting me to look after their kids in the same house they'll be in, but they'll be in the other room and don't want the children to distract them. My parents told me I've done the right thing, but other people are telling me I don't know how it feels to have kids and want to spend time with friends and family and their kids interrupt them. So, am I the jerk? Well, considering you explicitly told them ahead of time you were not going to work those days, you're not the jerk for not working those days. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting to decide whether or not these people are jerks, why not hit that subscribe button down below? Our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to help my siblings with our mother's funeral plans, and for telling them I don't want to be named in her obituary? My mother died 2 days ago. My siblings were all with her when she died. I was not. She was a bully to me and hated my guts as long as I could remember. Not sure if it was the fact that I was the kid that looked so much like dad, or the fact that she was young when she got pregnant with me and resented me for it, or whether I was just unlucky. But she gave me a horrific childhood, and my dad died when we were all young, so I was left to watch her dote on my siblings and treat me like crap. I got to hear all the time that I'd ruined her life, that she wished she hadn't had me, that she dreamed of me dying and getting relief that she would never have to see me again. I ended up staying with friends from the age of 15, and I hadn't seen her since my 20th birthday, when she showed up with my siblings and told me she wanted to puke, just looking at me. I never told her I was gay, never introduced her to my husband or my children. When my siblings called me to tell me she was dying, I was so happy. Knowing she's gone, knowing that the woman who hated me for reasons out of my control, who made sure I knew how much she never wanted me, filled me with such a feeling of relief. But of course, my siblings are heartbroken. They wanted me to be involved. I told them no way, no how. I said she was a great mother to them and that was fine. But she was evil to me. She was evil and made my childhood heck, and I wasn't some grieving son and wasn't spending a single second giving her a nice send-off, or spending a single cent on it either. They got mad, told me it should be split between all of us. They'd already planned her obituary and told me how bad I would look if I didn't help plan, didn't show up. I told them to get my name off the obituary because the woman they described was not my mother. We argued, and they told me I was behaving just as badly as her by taking it out on them when they did nothing wrong. I told them I just wanted them to leave me out of it. I told them to pretend we're half-siblings, and I have a different mother out there if it helps. They told me I could at least do it for them, and to think about how hard this has been for them. The fighting just keeps going on, and it actually delayed the funeral planning since they spent more time trying to convince me than doing any planning. They kept asking for my opinion, etc., trying to draw me in, then get mad and tell me I'm treating them badly. Am I the jerk? I think they need to take an answer for an answer. You don't want any part in this. How hard is it for them to accept that? They're acting really selfishly here. This next story is, am I the jerk for announcing my pregnancy news on the same day my cousin announced she was engaged? I, female 30, am a part of an extended family group chat on Facebook. My family rarely chats in the group unless there's a big life event happening or we're organizing a family event. Earlier this year, one of my aunties asked if anyone had any life updates to share. My cousin, female, 30, had a particularly big life update and announced that she got engaged to her partner of 7 years first. All the family, including myself, congratulated her, and I was genuinely very happy. I didn't think too much of it at the time, but I thought since we were going around sharing our life updates, I thought it would be fitting to announce my pregnancy in the group chat as well. All my family congratulated me as well, and everyone seemed really excited about my baby news, including my cousin. A couple of days later, my cousin messages a long paragraph, absolutely furious. She accused me of stealing her spotlight, announcing my pregnancy on the same day as her engagement. Although she seemed happy for me in the group chat the day before, I immediately apologized to her and felt so guilty after the fact. My cousin never messages me back after my apology, and I didn't talk to her again for the rest of my pregnancy. I feel really sad about all this, as it's now formed a wedge between my mom and my auntie as they've taken sides. To top it all off, several months later, my beautiful baby daughter was born, and on the same day as my cousin's birthday. Coincidence, right? I've very recently given birth to a beautiful daughter, and I wanted to make a baby announcement on the day she was born. However, I couldn't bring myself to do it because my cousin just turned 30, which is a huge milestone. I'm already not on speaking terms with my cousin and her family just over this, and don't want to steal my cousin's spotlight a second time. Although I feel deep down that I have every right to celebrate my daughter's birth and her future birthdays without having to feel guilty of stealing someone else's spotlight just because they share a birthday. I'm sorry for OP's cousin that OP also has big life-changing news going on. Sorry that the world can't process two people in the same general family having big news. Am I the jerk because when my brother and his husband adopted a baby, I asked if they got a dog or a cat? Throw away because it's embarrassing. My brother and his husband recently adopted their son. It was kind of sudden, the baby dropped at the fire department sort of situation. I had known they were in the process of adopting, but as far as I knew, they were kind of early on. I don't know anything about the process, so I guess that a pregnant woman looked through the stacks of applicants, picked some family, met up with them, and they went to the hospital to get the baby when it was born. Basically, I thought there would be a lot of lead up to them becoming dads, and I would have a heads up. So my bro called me last week and said, "Congrats, you're an uncle, you have a little nephew." And reflexively I just said, "Oh, nice, did you get a dog or a cat?" My bro was silent for a bit, and I was thinking, that's not a hard question. And he finally says, "A human baby, we adopted a baby boy." And I was like, crap, sorry, that was fast. My mom was absolutely horrified at this story, and I've been deemed the biggest family jerk this year over it. My brother doesn't seem mad. His husband seems to be very annoyed with me. No one understands why I would ask that, so I mean, I don't know. am I a jerk here? I'm not neurotypical, so it's hard for me to know if maybe they're teasing me and not actually that mad. However, if this situation needs a real sit-down kind of apology for me being a major jerk, then I want to do that. I don't really understand why they're that upset about it. It seems like a pretty honest enough mistake to make. It's not like they said, hey, we adopted, and OP replied, oh, sorry to hear that. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not including my grandchildren's stepmother, step, and half-siblings in a family book? My youngest daughter died 9 years ago. She left behind a husband, Joe, and 3 children. My granddaughter's now 17 and my grandsons are now 16 and 15. Joe has since remarried to a lovely woman, Marie. Marie has a son and a daughter from a previous marriage, and she and Joe have a 5-year-old together. We get along with Marie and the other children, though I would say we're not very close, and we're definitely not like we were when my daughter was alive. That appears to now be a problem. You see, there's a book, a scrapbook type of book, where we add new members of the family to it, and the children born get little updates about them till they're grown. It was started by my grandmother and continued by my mother, and now me. It's not in the best condition, but we cherish it in the family and those who are gone. When we look back, there's little memories in there to make us smile. I don't have Marie or any of her children in this book, but they're aware of the book's existence from Joe and from my grandchildren. My oldest granddaughter and her wife became parents recently, and the book became a hot topic. Marie was unhappy that my great-grandchild was included, but not her and her kids, because my great-grandchild is not related by blood. Joe told me that the kids would love to have their whole family added to it, but then my grandchildren claimed something different. It's become such a mess. Joe, Marie, and I eventually sat down to discuss it, and they told me they feel like Marie and the kids should be shown full acceptance as part of the whole family and included. Marie also added that she should be added where Joe is, which is pages joined to my daughters. I said that it would never happen. She told me that she and her kids are just as much part of my family. I told her she's not. I made it very clear she will never be my daughter. Joe told me it would set a good example for my grandchildren, for them to fully embrace Marie and the children, to drop the need for the step, and to see that they're all accepted just as much as he and they are. I told them I couldn't do that I love him, that I love my grandchildren, but I don't love Marie or their other children. That I like them and they're good to have around, but it's not the same. They're angry. My grandchildren are upset that their dad wanted Marie and the other kids to be in the book. Marie called me a terrible grandmother and person, and that she had told her kids that I was grandma, and now I'd made their lives so much more terrible. Am I the jerk? I think OP is not the jerk, especially considering their children and their grandchildren are all kind of already grown. It would be a little different, I feel, if they came in when everybody was still young and growing up together. This next story is, am I the jerk for kicking my sister out of my house because she walked out of my shower naked? I, 21-year-old female, have had my sister, 18-year-old female, over for the past 3 days, as she was fully renovating her apartment that she got for her 18th 3 weeks ago, and couldn't stand being there when it was undergoing. It was to last for 6 days, and she said that she would be out most of the time for school or with friends. She doesn't want to go to our parents' home as she can't stand any more interventions from our father, as she wasn't supposed to move in until school finishes, though played the I'm 18 card. I allowed for her to stay for this short period, and it wouldn't be inconvenient as we all live less than 2 miles from each other. Me and my boyfriend, 22-year-old male, live together, and he adores my sister, even though she is, according to him, a bad influence. I've had to attend classes most of my days, so I'm not here from the morning till the afternoon or evening. My boyfriend's doing an internship right now, so he's not always home, but he is there more than me. My sister, for the majority of her life, would always walk out of the shower naked and wouldn't care who would see her. One of our bathrooms that she conveniently uses is our bedroom one, where you have to go in our room and walk past it to go to the bathroom. My boyfriend finishes early on Mondays, and my sister came home earlier than expected. I usually head home as quick as I can, as we want to use this free time together, though my sister had other plans. According to my boyfriend, she went straight into our shower as soon as she came home. Whilst he was laying on our bed, She was crying loudly in the shower and proceeded to walk out of the shower and back in as she forgot something 3 times. After finding this out, I proceeded to terminate her stay. She called me unreasonable and an insecure freak. My parents put me at fault as well for making her break down as she went back to our parents' house. My boyfriends informed me that I overreacted and he just wanted me to tell her to stop doing that as it was bizarre. Am I the jerk? I just think anybody would be uncomfortable in that situation, and whether they have habits or not, they're in somebody else's house and should respect that. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not wanting to continue supporting my daughter's, 12-year-old female, gymnastics training? When my daughter was young, we introduced her to gymnastics. She was totally hooked and kept asking for more and more lessons. We encouraged her, thinking she'll eventually lose interest. Now she's 12, training 20 hours a week, spending weekend after weekend competing at high-level competitions. Problem is, she's 5'7" already and still growing. She's starting to have an ambition for D1 scholarship or even Olympics. That makes me very worried. Being 5'7" basically kills her chance of going to the Olympics. D1 gymnastics scholarship is already rare. The odds of her getting one with her height is even more rare. It makes me feel bad that our daughter is very, very dedicated. She's almost always the first one at the gym and the last one to leave. She watches replays of her routine on our drive to training, turns down social events because she needs to train, does extra conditioning at home. Yet I cannot justify blowing thousands of dollars a year and hundreds of hours in time every year to gamble on something with so little chance of success. All the hours spent at her training, driving her to competition, is already causing our family life to suffer. She under-rotates her skills because of her height and gets injured more frequently than others. Her academics are suffering because of her gymnastics commitment. Her life is going in the wrong direction because of gymnastics. The band-aid is better ripped off earlier than later. My husband agrees. I broke the news to my daughter. Frankly, it breaks my heart to tell her to give up something she's worked so hard for. I told her I know she's a hard worker. She would get a much better reward if she channels her hard work elsewhere, like in school or another sport. Heck, she plays tennis with the family only casually, yet she was able to win a few under-12 tournaments locally. If that's not talent, I don't know what is. Needless to say, she didn't take that well. She cried and cried and cried, locking herself in her room, refusing to eat, saying maybe if she doesn't eat, she'll become shorter. I told her over and over that I love her and I just want the best for her, but she wouldn't have any of it. I tried to reason with her, telling her chasing a dream is a privilege, not a right. No use. My husband is now softened, even though we used to have an agreement. Our family's now phoning us, trying to persuade us to let her continue training, even offering support for training costs and pickup and drop-offs. If she has the right body type to be an elite gymnast, or if she's tall like she is, but isn't struggling because of her height, I would support her unconditionally. However, that's not the case. Sometimes I feel like giving in, but to think it through, I was the person who drove her to training and competition. I am the breadwinner who paid for her training. It should be my right to call it off, especially as a parent. Help me out, Reddit. Am I the wrongs? It might be easy for people to say that OP is the jerk, but when you hear the stories of people who were in similar situations who have a lifetime of injuries and pain, and the fact that it's affecting their social life and grades, I think it really creates a discussion where OP might not be wrong. Our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to address someone by their chosen form of address? I've been with a company for 6 years now. We're very informal with each other and have a fairly laid-back culture. The company president is Dave, my boss is Lou. I tell employees who call me Mr. Smith, fake name, that my name is Dennis and that there's no need for formality. We recently hired a new employee. The fake name I'll give her for this post is Ginny Potter. In coming on board with us, Ginny signed all of her emails Miss Potter. When she answers the phone, it's, "Good afternoon, this is Miss Potter speaking." When she calls me, it's, "Good morning, Dennis, this is Miss Potter." And my response is, "Good morning, Ginny, how can I help you?" If I send an email to Ginny, the response is signed by Miss Potter, emphasis hers. She's 3 levels below me in a different line of report in terms of company hierarchy, so her supervisor's boss reports to someone on the same level as me, if that makes sense. It got back to me that she thinks I'm disrespectful for not calling her Miss Potter when I speak to her. When I spoke to others about it, most state that they just ignore it, don't use a name to address her, respond to her queries, and let her call herself what she wants. My boss thinks it's idiotic in that she's not at any level within the company to demand that. When I told my wife, she replied that it's obviously a button for this woman and that I'm being a jerk by antagonizing her. My counterpoint to this is that nobody in the company gets addressed formally, and if I don't call my boss or his boss by anything but their first names, I'm not going to formally address another employee several layers down the hierarchy. Not gonna lie, Mr. OP sounds like a jerk to me. Or should I be less formal and just call them jerk? Our next story is, am I the jerk for throwing away the expensive whiskey my brother got me for my 40th? I'm 40-year-old male, just turned 40 last week. I'm divorced and I have 2 teenage kids with my ex-wife, 17-year-old male and 14-year-old female. My whole family came to my and my girlfriend's apartment last Saturday for my birthday party. My parents, some aunts and uncles, some cousins, my 3 brothers with their families, my 2 kids, and my girlfriend's 15-year-old son who lives with us. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I've been sober for 6 years now. Alcohol absolutely ruined my life. It destroyed my marriage and nuked my relationship with my kids for years. I don't allow alcohol in my home now for anyone. It just isn't served or tolerated here. My entire family knows this very well, as they know my entire history with alcohol. For my 40th, my brother bought me a very expensive bottle of whiskey. It had a writing on it, a very heavy bottle and very old whiskey, so it probably cost him a couple $100. When he gave me the bottle, I was shocked and said that I don't drink, but thanks for the gift. He then opened the bottle and started pouring shots in plastic cups for everyone. My daughter had a panic attack at the smell of alcohol, which I'm painfully aware is my fault, and I will never forgive myself for it. So I told my brother to take the alcohol out on the balcony and just leave it there. He wouldn't do it and took a shot of the whiskey. I told him to seriously stop it, and he proceeded to pour the whiskey. He then said I'm acting like a sober saint now when I ruined everyone's birthdays for years with my drinking. I told him to come to the hallway with me and talk it out. He refused and put a glass of whiskey in my hand. I took the trash can, threw the whiskey bottle in it and the plastic cups, and took the trash out. My brother then stormed off and my mom followed him. She later called me, demanding an apology for disrespecting my brother like that. My dad said I was being overly sensitive, and some of my other family members also agree. Am I the jerk here? Not only do I think OP's not the jerk, I'm concerned that maybe their brother has something going on. This next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to buy my husband an expensive car, even though I have the money? My husband, male 35, and I, female 30, have been married for the past 10 years, and we have 5 amazing daughters together. Because of that, I dropped out of college and have been a stay-at-home mom for the past 10 years when we had our oldest daughter. My husband is the breadwinner and I take care of all the chores and childcare. While my husband earns quite a bit of money which allows us to live comfortably, he's also obsessed with budgeting. Thus, I typically only have enough for household expenses. For the past 5 years, I've been working on a series of books. I've been writing everywhere I could. 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and while I sacrificed a lot of sleep, I have managed to finish my series, unbeknownst to my husband. I kept it a secret because he always considered it a waste of time. It was tough, but I managed to get an agent and was incredibly lucky to get a deal to have my series published. I was ecstatic, and when they told me how big my advance would be, I almost fainted. It's much more than I expected for a first-time deal. It's in the higher 5 digits. I haven't told my husband yet, and I had to borrow money from my sister to get an accountant. Ideally, I want that money saved up should something happen because I honestly don't know the details of our home finances or for our kids' future. Whatever will be needed. Plus, I would love to have some spending money without asking my husband Greg. However, Greg found my contract, and he's now demanding I get him a new car for Christmas. A very expensive new car, which would cost the majority of my advance. I politely refused, saying that he didn't need a car that expensive and that the money was supposed to be saved up. I tried to explain my position, but he wouldn't have it. He basically called me a jerk without actually using the word. He said that because he supported me all these years, I owe him, and without him and his money, I wouldn't be where I am now. He's told me that I either buy him the car or I have to start paying for household expenses half and half. The thing is, I would still be a stay-at-home mom. I don't know if my book will be a success. For all I know, this will be the only money I'll ever get from my book deal because it'll flop. Am I the jerk for not wanting to buy my husband a car, even though I have the money? This next story is, am I the jerk for breaking my grandma's heart? My 16-year-old female dad is a piece of crap. I'm sorry, but he just is. He isn't all that terrible to me or my brother, 17-year-old male, but he's horrible to our mom. Growing up, it was very obvious that our dad saw our mom as lesser than. He would yell at her over everything and made her responsible for everything, cleaning, taking care of us, etc. My mom never said anything and tried her hardest to make it seem like everything was okay. I'm ashamed to admit, but I'm too scared to stand up to my dad. I always freeze. My brother, on the other hand, does not give a crap. He yells back and isn't afraid of anything. I think my brother realized that I'm too scared to protect our mom and recently told us that he's going to a college nearby and will be commuting, as the college doesn't require first years to live on campus. My parents were confused and my dad was a little upset. He kept telling him that he's going to miss out and he'll regret it, but my brother didn't budge. Mom even told him that he should go and that she'll be fine, but my brother just said that they're lucky he's even going to college. Well, yesterday, we got a surprise visit from our grandma, Dad's mom. She never visits, and when she does, she also just treats my mom like crap, so we weren't very excited. But we were civil because, well, if we aren't, then she'll find a way to blame our mom. It was okay at first, but then she asked my mom, "Is this what you wanted? Are you proud of yourself?" My mom started to shake, but my brother immediately got in between them. Grandma just rolled her eyes and asked my brother if he was really going to throw away his life because he thinks his mom's too fragile to survive without him. My brother didn't say anything. I then spoke up and said, "It's not because of mom, it's because of you and dad. You guys are horrible and you really need to get the freak out." My grandma immediately started yelling at me. She said that she expected better and said that I'm rude, disrespectful, and bratty. She then told my mom that she raised horrible kids before leaving angrily. I know I was just standing up for my mom, and my brother keeps telling me I'm fine, but I feel guilty. My grandma apparently adores me according to my dad, and I really broke her heart. And it's not like I made things better, maybe even worse. My dad's expecting me to apologize, but I don't know. I don't want to. Am I the jerk? I think it's fair to apologize after the grandma does. And let's be real, she's not going to do so. This next story is, am I the jerk for not making my children be quiet while my wife had a headache? I've been with my wife for 2 years. I have 2 children from a previous relationship who are 5 and 8. Currently 7 months pregnant, been married and living together for 5 months. It's been an adaptation for everyone, mostly the children. During our relationship, even before living together, I knew my wife got the occasional headache. She takes painkillers but says they don't help. So she'll usually spend the day in our bedroom and sleep. The kids are at home and wife has a headache. I'm working from home. The kids are doing what they normally do, playing. The wife texts me asking me to keep them from making so much noise. I was in a meeting when she texted, so I didn't actually look at it till an hour later. She's upset, but the way I see it is, it's the children's home. They're playing. What am I meant to say? My wife has a headache, go read a book? I don't know if I'm the jerk. Wife does. Figured I'd ask here. Am I the jerk? This next story is, would I be the jerk if I asked my neighbors to not let their dogs out from 12 to 2 p.m.? I'm a 28-year-old female with a 16-month-old daughter. For those who understand how baby naps work, she's been on a 1-nap schedule from 12 to 2 p.m. since she was about 13.5 to 14 months old. For context, my neighbors have 2 adult German Shepherd dogs who every time they are let outside bark and, you guessed it, bark. The issue lies in when they let their dogs out. Now, I understand fully that they need to be let out to use the bathroom or to run around and burn some energy. The problem is, they tend to let their dogs out right in the middle of my daughter's nap, right when she's transitioning sleep cycles. As such, the barking always wakes her, cutting her nap short. This causes her to get overtired and be unruly at night, especially before bed. My fiance, her father, and I have tried a handful of times putting her to bed earlier, but it never works. She's used to her bedtime being when it is, and if we try to get her down even 15 minutes earlier, she fights going to sleep. It's even worse when she's getting overtired. I feel like I would be the jerk because they can't control their dogs when they need to be let out, but at the same time, we've had issues before with the barking, and while they did some training, they didn't stick with it to my knowledge. Also, they rarely walk the dogs. I really don't want to come across as an insensitive jerk to their animals, but it would help so much if they just didn't let them outside between those 2 hours. Also to add, my fiance puts her to bed 5 nights a week, and it's just in his personality that he doesn't have my saintly patience, so when she gets unruly it causes him tremendous stress. So would I be the jerk if I talked with them and asked them to not let their dogs out between 12 to 2? All I know is if I was going about my day and I had my dogs, and I had some neighbor who was trying to control when I could or couldn't let them out, because for the 5 to 10 minutes that they're out there, they're going to bark or run around and whatnot, it would annoy me pretty heavily. I feel for them because raising the kid and having a cranky kid is not fun, but I think it's unreasonable to try to prevent a neighbor from letting their dogs out between the hours of 12 to 2 p.m. Our next story is, am I the jerk for sending my daughter to her room because she farted at our family dinner? My daughter is 14 years old. I'll call her Rosie to maintain privacy. She's the middle of 4 kids, with my oldest sons being 16, 18, and youngest son is 10. She's my only daughter. She has high-functioning autism and is starting to model some of the boys' behavior, and to the next level, she has some sort of a fart fetish. She laughs at farts, looks up every fact on farting, including foods that trigger gas, etc., watches fart pranks on her iPad out loud, all without any regard to the context of the situation. I wish I was joking. I've taught her and our sons table manners. I've been teaching them and reinforcing them since they were little. They were told to say excuse me when they belch, cover their mouth when they cough and sneeze, close their mouth when they eat. Very basic table manners. Some of these things I tell her each time. It's like I told her the first time. Their grandparents, aunt and uncle, and their younger cousins were invited over to our Thanksgiving dinner. I set expectations with the entire family to be on their best behavior and leave topics regarding bodily functions out of the dinner table. Dinner underway, she gulped down a cup of lemonade and then proceeded to belch a few times, which the family turned to gaze at her. I reminded her to say excuse me and hold in her burps. In the middle of a discussion with the rest of the family, she passed gas and giggled. The entire family looked at her direction with stern gazes and some jaw drops. It was after the 3rd time I threw my hands and shook my head at her, telling her to go to her room and that her actions were disgusting, rude, and not ladylike, and she needs to excuse herself to do that. Her father smirked a little and some of the little ones giggled, which I told them, enough, it's not funny. My daughter apologized and stated she'll be careful, which I then responded that she had multiple times to. She belched, smacked during the entire dinner, and farted. She had more than enough time to correct herself. This is unacceptable to be doing this behavior when people are having a meal, and I raised her better than this, and we'll have this conversation later, and for now to go to her room. She went to her room in tears. After a conversation with my daughter about the behaviors, she apologized again and said that she was trying to make everyone laugh and didn't expect people to get mad. I did remind her that it was actually rude and she is expected not to do that again with company over. After a conversation with my husband, who passes gas very casually, thankfully doesn't do it with company over, he said that I was being too harsh on her and that it was just a fart, which I did call him out on smirking at dinner and stated that she modeled her behavior from him. A part of me agreed with him, and I thought I was too harsh on her and made a big deal over nothing. Was I being too hard on her, Reddit? Am I the jerk? As long as they can understand the concept of a time and a place, I don't think OP was wrong at all, and I think what OP did was appropriate in trying to get them to understand what they did was wrong. That said, our final story of the day is, am I the jerk for not buying Christmas gifts for my 5-year-old nephew, but will buy it for all other nephews and nieces? My parents were very busy. I have 6 siblings. I'm the second oldest. Me and my older brother have no contact for about 8 years. He lived in another country with his wife and 5-year-old son. This year they moved back to our country. They always spent Christmas with his wife's parents and then came to our parents the next day without me present. A couple of years back, I had a tragedy and got a lot for compensation. I invested, and I'm now living very good from passive income. For the last 3 years, I buy all the gifts for Christmas for my nephews and nieces. My siblings give me their letters for Santa, and I go all out. I absolutely love seeing them when they open the gifts. I already got all the letters this year and have all the gifts ready, but then last week, my mother wanted to give me another letter. She said it's from my nephew from my oldest brother. I was surprised, but then told her I won't buy anything for him. I don't even know him, and I'm not prepared to spend that much on a stranger kid. My parents then told me that we can't single him out, that he would be very sad seeing other kids opening gifts, and him not getting anything. I told them they can buy the gifts, and maybe my siblings will chip in. My mother started crying that they can't match my gifts and begged me to reconsider. I refused. I'm hurt even because I just found out that my brother's family will be with us for Christmas. Now they're text bombing me that I'm ruining Christmas. My partner said that maybe we should buy gifts for my nephew, that he's innocent and one more smile won't hurt. Am I the jerk if I refuse? I think OP is a jerk in this situation only because they're taking out their anger on their brother out on an innocent kid who I think is worth investing a Christmas gift into just to build a relationship with your own nephew. Am I the jerk for leaving my 9-year-old half-brother home alone? Hi, so I, 19-year-old female, live with my dad, stepmom, and my half-brother, 9-year-old male. For weeks, it was planned that this past Friday night, my dad and my stepmom were going to her parents' 40th wedding anniversary at some fancy restaurant. Me and my brother weren't invited because we're not adults. Since I didn't get an invitation and didn't want to be stuck at home with just my brother, I decided to make plans myself, and me and my boyfriend were going to go on a date. My dad and stepmom wanted me to babysit my brother, but they've never paid me for babysitting him ever, and he's pretty hyperactive. So no thanks. After complaining for a bit, they hired a babysitter for him. So Friday comes around, and I'm doing my hair and makeup and all that, getting ready for the date. My dad and stepmom had already left for dinner. While I was getting ready, I get a call from my stepmom in the car on the way to the restaurant saying that the babysitter canceled and that I'd have to stay home and watch him. I told her I was sorry, but I had plans I didn't want to cancel. She said it was too late to call anyone and I had to stay. I said I can't, and that I would be at home for another 40-ish minutes, which would be enough time for them to come back home, and they have to be back then to watch him. She just hung up. Well, I finished getting ready and even waited another 15 minutes and they weren't back yet. I texted them that I was leaving and left my brother home alone. We live in a nice neighborhood and I'm pretty sure I stayed home alone when I was 10, so I was sure it would be fine, especially since they didn't bother to come back home. Anyways, long story short, when I came back home, they were already home and my stepmom was pissed that I left my brother home alone. She called me irresponsible and said I didn't care about family, etc. She also told me that I'd have to pay for this vase my brother broke. I feel this is unreasonable since I gave them a warning I was leaving, and they had the opportunity to come back. But I don't know. Am I the jerk? Oh, and just to add in case people are wondering if I paid rent or whatever, my grandmother gifted the house to my mom and dad as a wedding gift. When my mom left my dad, she gave him the house under the condition I could live there up until I finished grad school if I wanted to. Personally, I don't think OP's the jerk here. If you're 19 years old, wouldn't you guys agree that you should be free to pretty much do whatever you want? Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting to decide whether or not these people are jerks, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my husband he doesn't deserve to be a father? My 36-year-old female, husband Dennis, 39-year-old male, and I have been together for 9 years, married for 4. When we met, we were both looking to settle down and have kids, so it felt like fate that we met. We started talking seriously about having kids around a year and a half in, and started trying at 2 years. After 3 years of trying and heartache, we decided to adopt. Following a long and hard journey, we were finally able to welcome home our beautiful daughter, Sophie. My husband was a wonderful father to Sophie. He loved holding her and being with her. He would rush to her side when he heard her cries. I couldn't have wished for a better partner and father for my children. Just after everything settled down with Sophie, we got pregnant. Both Dennis and I were elated to hear that we would be having another child, and ecstatic when we found out we were having another little baby girl, so close in age to her sister. But I started getting worried when I heard some of Dennis's comments as I started to show more and we got closer to birth. He once even said, "I can't believe we're finally having our own baby." I questioned what he meant by this, as we have Sophie, but he brushed it off, saying I knew what he meant, but didn't say it again to me. When I gave birth, Sophie was 11 months old and had been saying am whenever she stroked my belly, so we decided to call our daughter Amy. When we brought Amy home is when Dennis's behavior really started to slip and lack towards Sophie. He stopped giving her attention, documenting, or even caring about her milestones. He started actively trying to avoid interactions with Sophie. For example, if I asked him to tend to Sophie, if she were making a fuss, he would go to the cot and say that he can't as he's tending to Amy. Sophie is clearly being impacted by the sudden loss of her father, so once the kids were in bed tonight, I asked him what's going on with him. He told me that since Amy was born, his love for Sophie has died. He then retracted and reworded, saying dimmed instead. I was horrified. I told him I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He tried to calm me down by saying that perhaps we could split them. He'll take Amy and I'd take Sophie. It almost felt like he was making a really crappy joke. I called him a terrible person and told him he didn't deserve to be a father. I told him that I felt betrayed and repulsed by him for using one child as a trial for the next. He left the house and hasn't come home since. It's snowy here and it's getting on for 2 a.m. and I'm getting worried. Honestly, it's a really concerning thing for OP to experience, and I'm wondering if there isn't some kind of therapy that feels almost necessary. I mean, splitting the kids? Our next story is, am I the jerk for the way I made my will? I'm in my late 50s and recently found out I have cancer. I have brain mets and things aren't looking too good. I'm taking care of my affairs and estate planning when this happened. I'm single, I have no kids and no long-term relationships. My parents died when I was young, and the only surviving family I have are my aunt and uncle, 2 sisters, and their kids. I'm pretty well off. I started in construction and have a very successful construction business. I'm leaving pretty much everything split between my family. I split a part of the estate to my aunt and uncle who are both in their late 70s. They don't have any kids, and I'd like to leave something for them to live comfortably. The remaining money, I've split equally between my sisters and their kids, 4 in total. My sisters are in their late 40s. Given our age difference and the early death of our parents, our relationship was a mix of sister-brother and sister-father. I was doing a lot of the things our parents would do when they were growing up. I'm very close to them. The problem my brother-in-laws had was the way I structured the money. I have the money invested in a long-standing trust fund. All 6 of them will receive $1 for every $1 they earn. This would essentially double their income. Any remaining money will be available to them after they reach 65 years of age. They also have the option to not use any money and let the investments continue until they retire. Alternatively, if they don't work, they'll get no money till they're 65 years old. My nieces and nephews have either started working or in the final year of their college. My reasoning is that I want them to be self-sufficient. I don't want them to rely on this money or get lost in the sudden influx of wealth. I had a recent sit-down with the family to explain things. I didn't want to leave any bitter feelings or cause fights over my money after my death. Everyone seemed pretty accepting, until I got a bunch of angry calls and messages from my brother-in-laws. Both of them were calling me a control freak, trying to tell their kids and wives how to live their lives. I'm a bit shocked. I didn't really have such an intention. Am I being a controlling jerk? To be honest, I think a lot of people are going to have frustration here. Along the way, they may feel like they could use that money, but in the end, OP's just looking out for them. Our next story is, am I the jerk for trying to help my daughter make healthier choices? I'm a mom of 2 beautiful children. My youngest, Paige, just entered her freshman year. She's normally a very happy girl, but lately Paige has dreaded going to school and has even begged me not to go. No matter how many times I asked, she would not tell me why she hated school. I asked Eliza, who's a sophomore, to find out why Paige doesn't want to go to school. She did, and it turns out that Paige has been getting bullied at school and her peers have called her fat. Now, Paige isn't a fat girl. She's very athletic and plays a lot of sports, but she is a bit on the chubbier side. Since Paige wouldn't come to me about the issue, I figured I shouldn't say anything to her about it, but I did decide that I could still be helpful by making healthier meals at home. I stopped picking up on healthy, processed foods at the grocery store and instead stocked up on vegetables and whole foods. Now, here's where I may be the jerk. Paige asked me to pick up Oreos on my next trip to the store, and I finally broke and told her that instead of turning to food, she could talk to me. Paige stormed upstairs and slammed her door. Even Eliza was upset with me. It may have come out the wrong way, but I really didn't mean anything wrong by that. I just meant I'm her mom and she can always come to me. Am I the jerk? I think OP is the jerk. If OP wants that level of open discussion, maybe start by having that level of open discussion with your own kid. Also, OP's handling the food situation, I think, in a totally wrong way. This next story is, am I the jerk for asking my daughter to uphold her end of the deal? Honestly, I don't even feel that this situation needs to be on Reddit, but my daughter, husband, and many of my family members are calling me a jerk, and I'm really not sure anymore. For context, 4 years ago, when my daughter was 12, she desperately wanted a pool. She said that all of her friends had pools and she was the only one who didn't have one. Plus, she loved swimming. She insisted that she would use it daily in the summer. My husband and I could afford one, but as I'm sure some of you know, pools are very expensive, and neither of us really like swimming, so we wanted my daughter to understand the cost she was asking for. We made an agreement that we would install a pool, but that once she was old enough to start working, she would pay us back for half of it. She quickly agreed. Well, flash forward to now, she's 16 and just got her first job, and now she wants to save up for a prom dress she really likes. I reminded her of our agreement about the pool, and she no longer wants to uphold her end of the agreement. I insisted, threatening to take away phone and car privileges if she doesn't pay her father and I back. Now she won't speak to me. My husband's agreeing with her, saying that we can't honestly have expected a 12-year-old to keep her end of the agreement. For me, this isn't even about money. It's about teaching my young daughter the right morals to live life with. I don't want her to think she can just go around making deals for her benefit and then just not upholding them. Am I the jerk? You know, I think this is a very good case example of why 12-year-olds can't sign for things. Just something to think about. This next story is, am I the jerk for not wanting to be disinvited from a trip I planned? I, 27-year-old female, planned a ski trip with my boyfriend, 29-year-old male, and some of our friends, mostly his friends. We booked in advance, told them about it, let them know they could come or not. We planned on bringing our computers to have a LAN party while we were there. My boyfriend and I gamed together. Once a few people wanted to go, we were really excited. Recently, I learned as we arrived at someone's house to watch a game together as a group that I'm not invited on the trip any longer because one of his friend's girlfriends couldn't come due to work and now it's going to be a guys trip. I feel pretty hurt. I got upset and asked them what right they had to disinvite me from a trip that I planned and to basically make it no women allowed for some odd reason. We plan things all the time and I attend. We share the same interests a lot of the time, so I'm confused and bothered by the implication that I would be distracting or in the way or make it less fun. They brushed it off, so they're going now without me or anyone else that's female, I guess. My boyfriend feels torn. He's kind of a people pleaser and doesn't want to make waves. His friends say weird crap sometimes about women and say they're joking, but this makes me feel like they actually meant those things and don't even think of me as a friend. Straw/back situation, as some other things have happened that were similar and I brushed it off as my misunderstanding at the time. Instead of also being their friend, I'm just their friend's girlfriend, which really hurts because I've been there for a lot of these guys and have gone out of my way for them. For example, one of them projectile vomited in a bathroom at a friend's house everywhere and got embarrassed and didn't know how to clean it while drunk, so I cleaned it up for them. I've hosted at my house and always tried to make it fun. I don't understand. I told them it was messed up and that I planned the trip, so they don't get to decide that. They basically acted like I was being emotional and just needed to get over it. I've refused to talk to some of them since then. Everyone's acting like I don't want them to go and do things, just the guys, and I'm being controlling. The narrative has been lost among our friends, and I'm being painted as a villain compared to other women who are going who are cool with it. When actually, I don't give a crap. They go out all the time for guys' nights and guys' trips. I just want to enjoy the trip I planned, regardless of being a girl or not. I don't think telling them I'm coming anyway would even do anything. I can't imagine going now, with how they clearly feel. That would be really awkward probably. But it's created a rift between my dude and his friends, and they're telling him I'm being unreasonable and overreacting. And he's talking about not going and is really pissed at them, but doesn't want to ruin the friend group dynamic. I know I can just plan something else, but this sucks. Am I the jerk? You literally can't be the jerk for getting disinvited to something you organized. What you do is reorganize, invite all of them individually, and say if they have an issue, don't show up. I say don't let this ruin having a good time for you. Our next story is, am I the jerk for saying bring your own crap if you don't like it at my party? So I started only buying cheap beer when we have parties at my house. Because my boyfriend has some friends who never bring their own booze, I'm totally fine with hosting and having stuff for everyone, but there's been several times where the people who come drink literally everything we have, and not bringing any of their own to share with everyone else. Last night I bought a 30 rack of hams for $14, and a bunch of people were like, "This is disgusting, this is so gross," and I got tired of them complaining and said, "You can bring your own crap if you don't like it. Stop complaining." My boyfriend said that I was being crazy and should have just let the situation go. Am I the jerk for this? I don't think it makes OP the jerk, but I definitely think you should advertise bring your own stuff. Bring supplies for the party. Our next story is, am I the jerk for accidentally insulting my future daughter-in-law's infertility? I'm 64 and I have one son, Robert, with my late husband James. Robert's engaged to Sarah, who's also 35. Last Sunday, Sarah and Robert came to my house for dinner. We were chatting and I told them a story about James, who Sarah unfortunately never got to meet. While I was pregnant, James was very excited and insisted on putting together everything. Cribs and changing tables, etc. Bless him, but my James was not much of a carpenter, and one day when I was putting Robert in his crib, the whole thing broke. I managed to catch Robert in time, so no harm done, thankfully. After the story, I made a joke along the lines of Sarah never having that problem if they have children, because Robert actually is a carpenter. She burst into tears and asked me why I was being so cruel. I was taken aback, and I asked her what was wrong, as I certainly hadn't meant to upset her, and I was sorry if I had. She told me that they discovered recently that Sarah is infertile, and that she would never be able to have children even with IVF. I apologized profusely and said if I had known, I would have never have made a joke about it. James and I struggled with having Robert, and we were never able to give him siblings. So I felt awful that I hurt Sarah like that. The mood was ruined after that, and Robert and Sarah decided to leave early. On Tuesday, I ran into Robert's best friend and his wife while I was out shopping. His wife is good friends with Sarah and seemed unusually cold towards me. I asked why, and she said she hadn't known I was so rude and that I should be ashamed of mocking Sarah's infertility. It turns out that the story's been spread that I viciously insulted Sarah and insinuated she shouldn't marry Robert. The story even got back to our family, and a lot of our relatives are quite upset with me. I apologized when I made the joke, but now I'm wondering if I really did overstep that badly and insult Sarah horribly. I don't want to be a bad mother-in-law, and I get along quite well with Sarah ordinarily. I think OP's not the jerk, but they need to get on top of this ASAP and have a full family conversation about why things went down the way they did when you never knew that they had those issues. This next story is, am I the jerk for exposing my friend who has the same scar after she publicly made fun of me? I'm 18-year-old male friends with a girl, Melissa, 18-year-old female, I met through a volunteering gig. We've been hanging out more lately and found out more about each other. Actually, one of the things we bonded over is the fact that we have the same exact facial scar. We even got it at the same age, which is a crazy coincidence. We often discussed how it's impacted our self-image and self-esteem growing up and had lots of conversations. I felt like she understood me. The only difference is that she tends to cover her scar with makeup, whereas I don't. She says that it's not the same thing since she's a girl, and I get it. A few days ago, we went to a party together and hung out in a room with a few others. One of them was a girl who started chatting with us, and Melissa seemed really impressed with her. At one point, the girl pointed out my scar, which was blunt and made me feel self-conscious, but the good thing is that she said positive things. Melissa immediately joked that, "Actually, my scar makes me look creepy and intimidating." I asked her, "Does that mean you would also look creepy and intimidating if you didn't hide the same scar with makeup?" She looked shocked, and the people we were with gave me a look like I'd messed up. Afterwards, in the car, we had a massive argument where she called me an insensitive jerk. She said that I'm a crappy person for exposing her insecurity and belittling her feelings. I said that she's the actual jerk here, since she threw me under the bus to impress the girl or whatever. Not sure what she was trying to do. We spent a long time arguing, but eventually fell asleep. So, am I the jerk here, or is Melissa? If it ain't the pot calling the kettle black, Melissa is so full of it in this story. Our next story is, am I the jerk for preventing my sister from being scammed by this guy online by telling on her to bro and mom? My sister, 20-year-old female, confided in me, 19-year-old female, that the guy she's seeing online is about to get kicked out of the house by his parents and has nowhere to go, and she'll be helping him with money from the college fund our mom had set up for her. I was instantly alarmed, as this is a common scam, and even if it wasn't, this guy being kicked out of his parents' house is still concerning about his character, especially since they never even met IRL. I failed to convince her not to do it and begged her to at least let me tag along from afar when she withdraws the money and goes to meet him. She said yes, but when we went to the bank, she actually made a request for $6,000. I was shocked and kept hysterically begging her not to do this. She was carrying all $6,000 all in cash and going to meet this guy. She got tired of me pushing and yelled at me to leave her alone and that she changed her mind about me tagging along. She then just went ahead and hailed a taxi. I hurriedly went and blocked the door and begged the taxi driver to also take me with her. I told him she was irrational and didn't know what she was doing. I ended up going into the taxi with her. On the way there, I called my bro and mom and told them what's going on. My bro said he was coming and I shared our live location with him. My sister was absolutely mad and said I was horrible for doing this to her when I know how much she hates both mom and bro and doesn't trust them. She also said I had no right to interfere even if she was scammed or harmed. She then stopped the taxi and ran out and growled at me to not follow. I ignored her and kept following when my bro got in his car and honked at us. We both turned back, and when I looked back again, my sister had started running while he got down from the car and we both chased after her. In the end, we caught up. My bro told her he'll be following her all the time until he sees this guy and he'll get him to back off. My sister just broke down in tears and called us all freaking nuts, that she won't be going anywhere and to just leave her alone. We insisted she comes home right away, which she did. She went to her room and slammed the door in my face and wouldn't talk to me ever since. My mom said that she'll understand in time when she matures how big of a favor I did her and not to worry. But her reaction still ate at me and I'm not really sure if I did the right thing. Am I the jerk? So considering the guy explicitly wanted it in cash, it seems almost certainly a scam. You guys definitely saved her here, whether she ever comes to realize it or not. Our next story is, am I the jerk for selling my house since my roommates thought I was ripping them off? I have a massive mortgage on, a house in a high cost of living city. I have 4 roommates. I have the basement suite, and the upstairs is rented to 1 couple and 2 single people. They know I own the house, and all of them were recommended to me by friends or family. I still required a lease agreement and security deposit, as well as the first and last month's rent. I just was willing to rent to them at below market rate because I didn't have to advertise or arrange for a property manager. Between the 4 of them, I collect enough to cover the mortgage and utilities with a little left over. I save my money and use it to pay for major repairs and maintenance. Well, I'll be starting a new job in a different city in the new year. I knew about this back in late October. I offered the couple an opportunity to take over the basement suite in the new year for a little bit more money. They would get a massive bedroom upgrade and a private living room, bathroom, and kitchen. They agreed and let me know that they were planning on moving out in 1 year, so they'd be willing to sign a 1-year lease. I asked the 2 singles if either of them wanted to take the master bedroom that would be empty. They both declined, but asked if they could turn it into a home office for them. I said sure, but that they would have to cover the rent for the room. They think I'm being unreasonable. Since I'll be making more money off the couple, they think I should keep their rent the same and let them have the room for free. I offered it to them for 80% of what I was getting before. They called me a selfish jerk for taking all of their money. Even if they took the deal, they would still be paying less than market value for a single room in our city. It turned into a huge fight with the people who referred them to me, calling me a greedy jerk for trying to suck money out of their friends. I don't need to deal with any of this. I found a property investor who was willing to buy my house and honor my current leases, including the new one for the couple. Unfortunately for the other 2 renters, their leases are up in February, and I imagine that the rents will be going up a fair bit. But that isn't my problem anymore. So now everyone they know are angry with me because these 2 people will most likely have to move into a crappier living situation. I feel bad because if I wasn't moving, I would stay and deal with it, but it is just easier to walk away. I mean, regardless of the grief, I don't think this makes OP the jerk at all. They were only ever trying to be fair regardless. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my son's girlfriend I would never consider her kid my first grandchild? I have 2 sons, Jason, 26, and Grant, 31. Jason has a girlfriend, Kelly, 26. Been together on and off for a couple of years. Jason tends to change girlfriends like he changes underwear, and this one has been quite the ride, full of tons of drama. She also cannot stand to not be the center of attention. I'll add that both have had multiple other relationships through this with other people. I'm not for the relationship, especially since Kelly has a 10-year-old son that's being dragged through this, but my son's an adult, and he can make his own choices. Grant also has a now fiancée, Tori, 28. She hadn't become the fiancé at this time. They've known each other for over a decade, were usually casually dating or just friends, and have also had an on and off type thing over the years, but it was more of the timing was always wrong thing. For example, she left to go to school in another state, then she came home, then she left for a job. When they were younger, she wasn't ready for anything serious and was too busy with school or work. I know they both kind of dated other people, but they always stayed close. Recently, he went to visit her, and a few weeks later, I found out I was going to be a grandma. I adore Tori, and her and Grant are great together. I am so excited, especially when I found out that Tori had decided to move back and that she was moving in with him so they could be a family. Thanksgiving dinner, she was at about 5 months pregnant. Jason brought Kelly along. They got back together a few months ago. Again. Tori had just officially moved back 2 weeks prior, so a lot of the family was excited to catch up with her, as she's come to a ton of family functions through the year and knew everyone. We started talking baby showers and things like that, and I made a comment about wanting to go all out for her because this was my first grandchild. This is also something I want to do because Tori's mom died when she was 14, and after that she bounced around the foster system and doesn't have any real family support. So I wanted to make her feel loved and supported. Kelly jumped in and mentioned her kid would always be my first grandchild. I told her, no, that will always be your child, and if my son decides on you, I will see him as my grandchild, but they won't be my first. Tori's baby will always be my first grandchild. She threw a fit, said that my son chose a woman with kids, and they should be accepted by the family, and then said Tori basically baby-trapped Grant. I told her to get back to me after they got married, or at least managed to stay together more than 6 months. She stormed out, son stormed out, son and her said that I'm the jerk. Dinner was completely awkward for the rest of the night. Considering Kelly isn't actually part of the family at all yet, I think OP's completely in the right here, especially considering they don't really see the kid. That said, our final story of the day is, am I the jerk for cutting my sister's hair? I, 18-year-old female, cut off a lot of my sister's, 19-year-old female, hair Friday night, as she had beautiful long brunette hair, but now she has a bob. On Friday, we went to a gathering and both got inebriated. My sister proceeded to come back to mine as it was the closest. She started talking about haircuts and how she wanted the smallest trim, that it wouldn't make a difference. I told her I had a trim kit in my restroom, and she told me to go get it. I showed her the trimmer, and she asked if I could trim the bottom. I did so, or I thought I did so, as when we woke up, the majority of her hair was in the bath, and she had an uneven bob. My sister started to freak out and was in complete shock. I was too. After a while of me calming her down and telling her she looks fancy, she told me that she must do the same to me and went to go look for my trimmer. I love my hair and wouldn't be able to do this. She kept insisting it was the only way things could ever be good. I told her no and hid my trimmer. She proceeded to get upset and told me that now she was now ugly and ruined. She proceeded to leave and hasn't talked to me in a day. Am I the jerk? I just find it incredibly hard to believe that OP is able to recall that they wanted a trim that was hardly noticeable, but yet weren't aware that they cut their hair into some short, uneven bob cut. I think there's a little bit more than OP's letting on, and I think they're probably the jerk. Though if it was an accident, I don't think OP deserves to have to cut their hair in return. Am I the jerk for banishing my teenage daughter's friend from our house because she made fun of my weight? I, 37-year-old female, have 2 kids with my husband, 41-year-old male, a 14-year-old daughter, and a 10-year-old son. Our daughter's always been a little socially awkward to the point that we've had her tested since we suspected her of being on the spectrum. Turns out she isn't on the spectrum, she's just a natural introvert. However, this year in school, we were thrilled when our daughter made a new friend her age, since that's an area in which she struggles. Long story short, she recently invited her new friend over, with our approval, to have dinner at our house and then spend the night. So my daughter's friend came over. My husband's usually the cook in the family, and this night was no exception. He made us a really nice meal. During the course of said meal, I asked my daughter's friend, "Are you enjoying the food?" She responded, "Yes, your husband is a great cook. No wonder you've ended up a bigger woman." The room got quiet for several moments. My husband tried to laugh it off and change the subject, but I wasn't having it. The girl had just leveled a completely uncalled for insult at me. My daughter's friend seemed to realize that she'd messed up, but she didn't say anything else. We finished an awkward dinner in mostly silence, and my daughter's friend did stay the night. This was a couple of months ago. Recently, my daughter asked if she could have her friend back over, and I told her, sure, if she's going to apologize to me. When our daughter asked what I meant, I reminded her of what she'd said. My daughter responded that it was over and that she didn't want to bring it up again. She then went to her father and asked, and he said sure, but she then told him what I'd said. He came to me and said, "Daughter's friend just felt awkward and tried to make a joke. It didn't land. For the sake of our daughter, can't you just let it go?" Yes, I could. But the thing is, I just want an apology from the girl. I need to see that she understands how rude she was before I can get on board with her and my daughter hanging out. My husband says that I'm being weird for insisting on an apology from a 14-year-old, especially since that girl is such a good friend of our daughter. I think that it's weird that I'm still waiting for an apology from that same girl. Seriously, that's all I need. I just need to know that any friend of my daughter is willing to own up to her screw-ups. As somebody who was once a socially awkward 14-year-old, if you want an apology, you should probably ask for it. I'm willing to bet they're more than afraid to even go near that topic anymore. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting to decide whether or not these people are jerks in the comments down below, why not hit that subscribe button? Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my brother off when he berated my daughter for not changing her cousin's diaper? Context: I moved in with my brother after my divorce 3 months ago and brought my 18-year-old daughter with me. My brother and his girlfriend have a 9-month-old daughter, my niece. This happened this past Friday. My brother's girlfriend was on a shift. She's a nurse, and my brother was in a work-from-home meeting. I was out of the house for hours. He was watching the baby via nanny cam, and apparently she needed a diaper change, but he was so busy. He texted my daughter asking if she'd go in and quickly change her cousin's diaper, but she refused. She told me that she had her reasons. 1, she doesn't feel comfortable around babies, and 2, she was already late for her friend's birthday party. Her other friend and brother were waiting on her outside. My brother insisted, but she refused, which made him cut the meeting and get kicked out of it. My daughter was out of the house at that point. I got home and there was a huge argument. I found my brother berating my daughter for not helping with her baby cousin and doing him this small, one-time favor. Now he got kicked out of his meeting. My daughter was crying, so I told my brother off and said that his daughter is his and his girlfriend's responsibility, and he shouldn't rely on my daughter for her care. He explained how it was just a one-time favor and how he's been very supportive of us since I divorced my ex, but I told him that it's not an excuse to force my daughter to do what she didn't feel comfortable with. His girlfriend got involved and called me an ungrateful jerk and told us we have 2 weeks to move out. I tried to speak to my brother about his girlfriend's decision, but he shut me off, saying that I was in the wrong for telling him off instead of holding my daughter accountable for her lack of support. Honestly, I think OP was right. Taking care of that baby is not the daughter's responsibility. Our next story is, would I be the jerk for taking my daughter to visit my family? My wife Jenna, 28-year-old female, and I, 32-year-old male, had our daughter Averly 6 months ago. We've been together for 10 years and married for 3. We both live out of state from our families, and neither of us have had the best relationship with them, though Jenna's family's made a lot of effort to come and visit, mend bridges, and interact with Averly since she was born. My family, mom 52-year-old female, stepdad 55-year-old male, and 3 younger brothers 17 to 21, live an extra few hours away and are yet to meet her. It's important to note that my mom and Jenna do not get along. Mom has always had something to say about Jenna, and the older Jenna's gotten and the longer it's gone on, the less Jenna's been willing to let it go over her head. This has resulted in us spending the last 10 years doing separate holiday visits. My plan this year was to drop Jenna at her parents' place safely after the flight, and then carry on the extra 3-hour drive with Averly to mine, and then pick her up on December 23rd so we could spend Christmas Day as a family. Jenna's response was simply no. In our house, no is usually a complete sentence, but I asked her why, and her response was, "We've talked about this when I was pregnant. You've never had my back with your mom, so I don't trust you to advocate for Averly, and since she's made no effort to be around her, I'm not comfortable with letting you take our baby into that environment without me. And I'm not going to go somewhere it's evident I'm not wanted." I brought up the fact that I want my daughter to know my step/parents and her side of the family, and that Jenna was stopping that from happening, and how unfair it was to my mom, given that her parents have been here at least twice a month since she's been born, and have been able to have that bonding time. I told her I would drop her off and take Averly anyway, or me and Averly would fly into my parents' home airport, but one way or another, she would be meeting them this Christmas. That's when Jenna just cracked and broke. She started bawling and repeating how she couldn't believe I'd put her in that position. And when I told this story to my best friend at the pub, even he raised his eyebrow and said it wasn't a good move. Jenna's been sleeping on the couch, and I'm beginning to feel awful and second guess everything. Would I be the jerk, or am I right in standing my ground here? I say have them come to you in a situation where your wife can be there. Otherwise, it just seems like a bit much for everybody. Our next story is, am I the jerk for using a joke about sexuality to imply my coworker's boundary with her boyfriend is stupid? For context, I, 29-year-old female, am bisexual and I've been working at my company for about a year and a half. We just started returning to the office about 3 months ago, and it's the first time I've really started to get to know my coworkers on a deeper level than just Zoom chats. It's about a 50-person company. I've never come out at work since there was never really an opportunity to. My immediate boss knows I have a girlfriend, but that's about it. Yesterday, I was eating lunch in the kitchen and chatting with one of my female coworkers, around 30-year-old female, that I've started to develop a friendship with. She mentioned a girls' trip she'd planned over the holidays, and I told her in turn about a trip that I'd planned with my best guy friend Matt, and I said my partner couldn't get off work to join. I should also mention that I'm femme and straight passing, She immediately raised her eyebrows and said, "Wow, that's wild that your boyfriend would let you go on a trip alone with another guy." Before I said anything about my relationship, I asked her why that was wild. She immediately went into a little mini rant about how her and her boyfriend have a boundary about not crossing friendships of the opposite sex, and it means that they have a deeper level of trust. It honestly came across as a little condescending. While I do believe that everyone knows the right thing for their relationship, I've always found this particular boundary to feel a little absurd to me, and so I said exactly why I feel that way. I wouldn't understand. That would be tough for my girlfriend and I since we're bisexual. I guess we wouldn't be able to have any friends at all, I said in a teasing tone and laughed. My coworker turned white as a sheet. Clearly I'd embarrassed her. I tried to change the subject and move on, but she started to look more angry than embarrassed. She basically said it was uncalled for to make fun of and insult her relationship, and that I set her up for failure by not telling her I was bisexual until that moment. She then had the nerve to say, "To be honest, I don't really think the workplace is somewhere to be discussing sexuality at all." I didn't say anything after that and walked away, embarrassed too. I feel conflicted about the whole exchange. On one hand, I don't think I'm the jerk at all, and that it's her fault for assuming my sexuality in the first place, and that she was telling me about her relationship, which means it was perfectly acceptable for me to talk about mine. On the other hand, my girlfriend said I was out of line to make that joke, and I clearly embarrassed her, and she was just being defensive, as anyone would if they felt their relationship was attacked. While I feel like my joke was really just the truth and not an attack, I can't help but feel like maybe I was the jerk. Do I owe her an apology? I don't think an apology is necessary, but prepare for an awkward conversation with HR probably. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my stepmother she's not the most important woman in my life? My dad is married to Yanni. They've been together for a little over 6 years and married for about 4 now. Dad was a widower when they met. I'm 16-year-old female, and my siblings are 14-year-old female and 12-year-old male. Our mom died 8 years ago. Yanni hasn't adjusted well to being a step-parent. I think she thought she would just be a parent to us because our mom had died and didn't consider that we would still talk about and have photos of mom. Over the years, she's been to therapy and her and my dad have gone to couples sessions. In the last year, the 5 of us have gone to family therapy, and she's admitted that it's hard for her because she feels like she's second best or a consolation to us, and that we don't really love and want her. Dad assured her that we all love her just as much as mom, that she's his number one and is vital to our family. For a while then, in sessions, she and the therapist would talk about how she feels like she's not a true member of the family, like she's a second-class member, not someone we see as important in the structure of the family. She said she never felt love from any of us, and she feels like even extended family, which she explicitly said was grandparents and any aunts and uncles, come before her when it comes to us kids. She said she sees it in so many things, including the way we don't regard her parents as our grandparents, or her 2 sisters as our aunts, and how when I turned 16 and we had a nice dinner party, my guest list included both my mom and dad's sides of the family, but not her side. My sister was the first to speak during all of this, and she said nothing was ever done to make her feel bad, that she just doesn't think of her as her mom or as being her parent. Once that was said, she was talking about how much that makes her feel bad and like she's not truly accepted. The therapist asked us to consider whether we'd be willing to deepen the relationship so she felt equally as loved and as important as our dad, and dad wanted us to consider ditching our typical Christmas dynamic and spend the time with her parents exclusively this year. Then 3 weeks ago, she brought up that I'd made something for class that went into details on my family, and she pointed out that she and her family were not mentioned. Then she asked why my grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins were mentioned on both sides, all with their own pages. But I couldn't make room for the most important woman in my life, her. I told her because she's not the most important woman in my life. I told her that will always be my mom, followed by both my grandmas. She asked if she was just second best then, if she was unimportant, and I refused to answer. Afterward, my dad and Yanni both told me that I was cruel to say that she wasn't the most important woman in my life when she's there every day and has done her best. Am I the jerk? Honestly, I'm questioning this therapist because I feel like they should realize they're not entitled to that mom role. This next story is, am I the jerk for throwing out a strange lady that entered my house uninvited? Today is my free day and I was kind of slow getting ready. I was just about to shower and was only in my underwear when a lady knocked on my door. She was already inside the house in front of my door. I thought that it was my mother-in-law and shouted, "Not a good time." I waited for her to leave, but she didn't and knocked again. Okay, must be important. I wrapped myself in a blanket and went to open the door. A strange lady stood in front of me, asking if there was an apartment showing around here. I was completely shocked and quite angry. She didn't ring the bell, there's no sign outside, and without going into detail, there's no possibility that there would be an apartment showing anywhere near here. I saw her judging my appearance, which angered me even more. I can wear what the heck I want in my own home. I told her to immediately leave the house in a commanding tone. She had the audacity to get annoyed for being told to leave. Do I really have to be nice to someone that just entered my house without warning? I think the simple answer is no, right? Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my dad's wife I own the house she lives in? My 29-year-old female dad married a woman named Maria a year ago after dating for 4 years. My dad wanted to buy a larger house for them to live in, but couldn't afford it without selling the home he lived in at the time, which is a unique property that he dearly loves. Although I now live abroad, I like the area he lives in, and my husband offered to buy a house there that my dad and Maria could live in. My dad agreed to this on the proviso that we not tell Maria that it wasn't him who paid for the house. This made no difference to me, so I agreed, and the house they live in is in my name, and they live there. I never planned to tell her. Recently, I went back to my home country and decided to stay with my dad for half my time there. The whole time, Maria made it clear I was an inconvenience and that me doing things with my dad was annoying to her, but I'm not a confrontational person, and I don't react to much, so I let it go. However, 2 days before I was due to leave, she came into my room and saw that I had my dad's dog on the bed. Now, this is a dog that my dad has had since before he met Maria and that I raised. Maria doesn't allow him on her bed, which is fine, but I've always had him sleep on mine. She flipped out, saying this was the final straw and that she'd had enough of me disrespecting her in her own home and I had to leave. I tried to de-escalate the situation, saying we should just wait for my dad and sit down and talk this out, but she was adamant that I had to leave and that she had the authority to make me. After several minutes of me trying to explain to her that it was absurd of her to try to kick me out of my dad's house without talking to him, she said that what she said went. And since she married my dad, this is technically her house. I just chuckled and said, since my name's on the deed, it's technically my house, but there's no need to get technical, we should just wait for my dad. She was shocked and left the room. When my dad came back, I told him what happened, and he went to speak to her. There was a shouting match, and she didn't speak to either of us until I left 2 days later. My dad's mad I told her, which I get, but since then I've also got texts from her kids saying that I was the jerk for telling her and making her feel like a guest in the house. This isn't the case. She isn't a guest. She's a tenant. But so is my dad, and the only point I was trying to make was that she didn't have any business trying to kick me out of my father's house, let alone my own property. I didn't take it there until she did. That said, maybe I should have just left the ownership out and let my dad handle it. Honestly, I think OP did their dad a favor. Would you guys agree with me when I say it's weird that he walked on eggshells and tried to prevent her from knowing any of this stuff? Our next story is, am I the jerk for not giving any of my grandparents' inheritance to my father's wife? My father married Amy, 29-year-old female, this past summer. I, 27-year-old female, have no relationship with her. I do my best to avoid any family events that she's attending. My grandparents and my father never had a great relationship. They told me that I would be receiving most of their inheritance in camp. My grandfather passed away 2 years ago from a heart attack. I graduated college and took care of my grandmother. She passed away in May from cancer. I kept the camp the same as they had left it, and currently have my girlfriend, 28-year-old female, living with me, I used some of the inheritance money on debt and student loans. I still have some left over, and I'm thinking about taking my girlfriend on a trip to visit her family. She's from Australia and hasn't been able to see her family since she moved here. My father spent the money he received on Amy. They announced last month that Amy was pregnant and were struggling to afford stuff for the baby. My father does work, and Amy does not. My father reached out to me a few days ago regarding the money, asking if I was willing to give some money to Amy, as she needed money to purchase baby clothes and other necessaries. I responded back to my father to let him know that the money I received was mine, and had no interest in giving Amy anything. My mother's aware and fully supports my decision on not helping my father and Amy. He hasn't spoken to me since reaching out, and Amy's spreading lies to parts of the family. I mean, I don't know what's going on between OP and Amy, but they're not entitled to any of OP's money. This next story is, am I the jerk for how I fought my boyfriend's medical bill going too far? My boyfriend had to go to the emergency room after an accident, and he got a truly ridiculous bill back. I offered to fight the bill because I've done it before, and he said sure. I went all out because honestly, if we were out $5,000 after insurance, that would mess up our holiday plans pretty bad. So I had him call the hospital and authorize me to handle his bill and access his medical records. Got an itemized bill and compared the prices for each code to the fair prices. Called billing to dispute the bill, but was told that billing only collects bills. I would need to contact admin to dispute. Bounced around a call center for hours trying to get someone who was actually qualified for bill disputes and getting nowhere. Google and LinkedIn searched for the hospital board of directors and upper management. Got 30 emails of the most influential people at the hospital, plus the hospital's investors. Every day would send a few emails, working my way up the chain, and writing an increasingly long email describing how they billed my client at 7 times over the fair price for services rendered, and how their billing department, customer service department, and the growing list of management I'd emailed had failed to address the issue. Escalated the emails until I was writing the director-level staff with the entire board of directors and a number of outside investors CC'd, asking for a written statement regarding their justification for billing at a rate 7 times higher than the national average for commensurate services to what's available at other hospitals, and sternly laying out the failures to appropriately respond at every level of the company. Well, once I'd done all that, which was honestly only like 15 minutes a day, they reduced the bill from $5,000 to $26. Yep, $26 freaking dollars. Well, I told my boyfriend the good news, and he was at first overjoyed and blown away, like literally jumping up and down and hugging me and saying I was literally a Christmas miracle. But then he asked how I did it. I said it wasn't too hard. I just had to send a couple emails each day. He was curious what I'd said, and I handed him my phone. He started to get stressed and flipping back through other emails, which there were like 60 of. He told me I went way too far. He was expecting me to dispute through their billing department or something normal and reasonable like that, not internet stalk every single manager and board member and investor and harass them into dropping the bill. I was frustrated because I had just saved us $5,000, actually made it possible for us to afford a nice Christmas and save some money. And he was so mad at me because I'd been a bit of a hard butt. I was furious. And he was also mad at me, saying he authorized me to dispute a bill, not basically threaten and harass a whole darn hospital for weeks. Am I the jerk for how I got my boyfriend's medical bills dropped? Maybe OP should go ahead and bill the boyfriend $5,000 for their time invested. Dude is clearly ungrateful for something awesome that OP did. Amazingly great work. Our next story is, am I the jerk for last minute uninviting multiple people for my wedding over a joke? I, 26-year-old female, am getting married in February 2023 to my fiancé, John, 29-year-old male. We've been together for 4 years. Before I met him, and for the first year and a half of our relationship, I lived with Tammy, 27-year-old female. Tammy and I have been best friends since we met at 12 or 13. Tammy and John have a great relationship too. The issue is with some people in my friend group who I met after John and I got serious. For some reason, they're all obsessed with the "and they were roommates" joke when it comes to Tammy and I. At first it was kind of funny, but now it's crossed a line and they won't stop. If I casually mention Tammy's coming along to an outing, at least 2 people will make some dirty sex joke about the 2 of us. She hit really hard times during COVID, and John and I let her stay in the guest bedroom. Cue the jokes about having a maid, wink wink, nudge nudge. It makes all 3 of us uncomfortable, and I've tried to get them to stop, but because they're my soon-to-be sister-in-law's friends, and I'm close with sister-in-law who doesn't make these jokes, it's been hard to cut them out or distance myself because of the tangled web of connections. I should note that I've been very clear that I dislike these jokes and that they're being disrespectful to myself, Tammy, and John. Well, last week we all went out and Tammy came along. I was in no mood for these types of jokes and made a note in my phone of everyone who made a joke and how many times they said it. At the end of the night, we all went back to my place, and I stood up and pointed at the jokesters and said, "You're uninvited." Out of 8 people who went out with us, 4 were uninvited. I made it very clear why and explained it again so there was no confusion. The 4 who were uninvited left the apartment. My fiance's on my side, but my sister-in-law is now fuming. She's super pissed that I've isolated her from her friends because she's obligated to pick family. I said she can still be friends with them so long as they stop the jokes. Christ alive, people, I'm not dictating her friendships. This was a part of a much bigger conversation that I was obviously not going to transcribe here. She can still be friends with them if they make those jokes, but the bigger picture was that I was not going to be friends with them if they continue to make those jokes. Naturally, the people who I uninvited are pissed too, and there's been a barrage of passive-aggressive Instagram posts about it and the money they've spent being wasted. Am I the jerk for uninviting them? I think not, considering you told them time and time again you hate those jokes. Good actual friends, no one to knock it off. That said, our final story of the day is, am I the jerk for how I responded to my sister-in-law's prank? I am deathly afraid of cats. There wasn't ever an incident, they just terrify me. My husband loves cats and had one of his own during his childhood. He knows how afraid I am of them though, and will protect me every time we visit someone that has a cat. He understands my fear and decided pretty early on that he prefers me to having a cat. His sister cannot comprehend this. She's always talking about how unfair and selfish I'm being, and that her brother deserves to have a cat. I just ignore her. One thing she started to do is tell my kids how great cats are and how they're missing out and should beg me to get them one. My kids are very young and easily influenced and have been asking me for a cat for weeks now. I almost gave in and visited my sister-in-law to try and pet her cat, but I freaked out and had a panic attack the second it looked at me. Well, we were having dinner at my sister-in-law's house. The cat was playing with the kids while the adults were sitting in the living room. I was stuck to my husband as simply knowing that a cat was in the area makes me feel sick. All of a sudden, my son calls me over saying that he needs me. He was in this small storage sort of room for some reason. Obviously, I go inside and he starts giggling and then something brushes past me and it was the cat. I was freaking terrified and screamed. I began to cry, hyperventilate, and I can't even remember what happened. I almost vomited too, but my husband heard and helped. Turns out, my sister-in-law decided it would be funny to make my kid think that pranking me with the cat would be funny. Obviously it wasn't. She thought it was though, and tried giving my son a high five for doing a good job. I was just so over it, and I ended up telling my sister-in-law that I hate her and her stupid freaking cat and that she's no longer allowed around my kids. She immediately started to cry and said that she just thought my fear of cats was silly and that if she made my kids show me, then I'd be more understanding. She didn't think I would act like that in front of my kids, like I can control my reaction. She said that she understands me hating her, but I'm being unfair for not letting her see her nephews. I just told her that she has her cat. She's been really upset and has called me everything you can think of. My mother-in-law is asking that I think about this some more and that I should cut her some slack. Am I the jerk for my harsh response to her prank? Yes, I've tried therapy and have done things such as figuring out the root cause, discussing reasons, setting short-term goals, helpful techniques, etc. I really wanted to fulfill my husband's dream of having a cat, but while I got some useful information, I still can't touch cats or be too close to them. I can be in their presence now though, and I cannot do exposure therapy, especially after this incident. I physically and mentally am unable to. I don't blame OP. If somebody has a known phobia and you're the jerk that thinks it's funny to scare them using that phobia, do you really even deserve to be around that person? Should you be shocked that they no longer want to be around you or for you to be in their life? Am I the jerk for telling my wife the cat is still her responsibility even if she's pregnant? My wife, 28, and I, 36, are expecting our first baby. 3 years ago, my wife decided she desperately wanted a cat. I hate cats and all animals in the house really, so I was against it. She wouldn't stop talking about it, so we finally made a deal. She could get a cat, but it was her responsibility. I would have nothing to do with it. She agreed. She stuck to her word and I stuck to mine. I mostly ignore the cat. Now she's pregnant and asked me if I can scoop the litter until she gives birth because of toxoplasmosis. But I looked it up and as long as she wears gloves and washes her hands, she should be good. So I told her absolutely not. She wasn't happy, but I reminded her of our agreement when we got the cat. I told her it was her responsibility, and if she didn't want to take care of it anymore with the new baby coming, we could get rid of it and find it a new home. She said no and has been scooping the litter. Her sister was over and saw her doing this and flipped out at me, telling me how dangerous it is. But of course, her sister's going to be on her side and overreact. I never wanted the cat, so I don't see how I'm wrong. As much as OP doesn't want the cat, I think they're still the jerk for saying no. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you love getting to decide whether or not people are some major jerks, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for not allowing my sister to make her kids food at my house during our Christmas party? I come from a broken home, so we have our Christmas with mom's side the first weekend of December. I, 44-year-old male, hosted. Usually my sister and I switch off host duties. My sister has 2 daughters who are incredibly picky eaters at 18 and 15 years old. My sister would come to family parties with a box of pasta and a bag of frozen chicken tenders that she'll make for her daughters. I want to know if I'm a jerk for what I did here. I knew that was her drill with them, but I've always found it to be very annoying, especially when I'm trying to cook, and she's taking up space making the pasta and chicken tenders. This year, I told my wife we won't be letting my sister in the kitchen this year, and the girls will have a choice of eating what I prepared or not eating. My sister accused me of being a cynic and getting joy from watching the girls be uncomfortable. I told her they're old enough to eat like adults. Also, the food I make is pretty standard. I do a filet roast, barbecue ribs, cheesy potatoes, stuffed artichoke, breaded cauliflower, ratatouille, and a salad. Certainly, some of these must be foods that an 18 and 15-year-old should be able to eat. Well, the girls sat and ate bread and butter while telling me that my food looked gross. I looked to my sister to calm them down, but they told me I deserved this, and it's not their fault for being picky eaters. I know I could have just let my sister do her thing, but it was the principle of the situation. I'm not sure if I was being a petty jerk, or if I had a legitimate reason to be upset. They're old enough, so I think, although being picky, you wouldn't have to give up that kitchen space for them. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my parents I won't attend their Christmas celebration until they send my husband a separate invitation? I'll preface this by saying that my husband Luke, male 32, does not get along with my parents. You can't tell who's right or who's wrong. There's always this ongoing tension between them, but they can be civil enough to sit together at one table. I recently got an invitation for Christmas celebrations for my parents, the invitation including me and Luke. But Luke thought that this was somewhat rude and disrespectful because he believes he should get his own invitation and not have his name mentioned as an extension to mine. We talked and he said he wouldn't go unless they sent him a proper invitation. I called my mom and asked if she could do it. She thought it was ridiculous and said that she and dad did the same with my sister and her husband. I told her it was fine, but Luke can be sensitive like that, so a simple invitation in a form of a text directly to him will fix it. She got defensive and said that Luke is being ridiculous. Dad claimed that Luke is trying to pull some power move to humiliate them, but I thought this was a small issue. They still thought it was ridiculous, so I told them I won't attend if they don't send him a separate invitation because he won't attend if he doesn't get it. This blew up, and my sister started arguing, saying that Luke needs to get over himself, and shamed me for trying to force our parents to send him an invitation by saying I won't come if they don't. We haven't talked after that, and we're waiting as of now. I think OP's being a big enabler here. I don't get why a joint invitation wouldn't be good enough. Our next story is, am I the jerk for making my daughter return a Halloween costume? This happened in October, and my daughter's still acting cold and hardly speaking to me. My daughter, female 16, works an after-school job 5 days a week. Her high school had a costume contest for Halloween. My daughter and her friends planned a group costume to enter. She went with her friends after school to buy costumes. I picked her and her friends up from the store and they showed me their costumes. My daughter spent $80 on hers. I was pissed. That's a lot of money to spend on something you're going to wear for a few hours. Very irresponsible use of money. I told her as much in the car. Told her it was ridiculous. I dropped her friends off and took her back to the store to return the costume and accessories. Her friends found someone else to take her place in the group, and they won the contest and a $100 Visa gift card to split. My daughter came home from school on Halloween, upset. She claimed she had to sit and watch while her friends had fun, and she missed out on everything. I pointed out to her after splitting the gift card, it would be way less than she spent on the costume, and it was only a few hours. But she didn't want to listen to reason. Now, a month later, she's still moody and mostly ignoring me. My ex-husband told me I made her miss out, and she works so much she missed out on a lot of stuff with her friends. And I could have let her have this, but at the end of the day, I saved her $80. I'm just trying to teach my daughter how to be responsible with money. She could have gotten a cheap costume, especially since she would have only have worn it for a few hours. I think you just have to understand the $80 wasn't for the costume, it was for the experience, whether they won or not. Our next story is, am I the jerk for forbidding my girlfriend to use my kitchen equipment? The problem started when my girlfriend moved in about 2 years ago. I'm a former professional chef with a great passion for food. Over the years, I've gotten myself a lot of kitchen equipment that's quite expensive. If it breaks, I won't be able to replace it for at least a couple of months. That I take care of as if it's my little babies. I have knives, pots, and pans that I've kept in pristine condition, despite using some of them a lot for 10 years or more. I also have a bunch of cheap, low-quality equipment in my kitchen that I call my crap pans. When she moved in, she asked me about them and why I didn't throw them out. And I jokingly told her that I keep them in case I have people that I don't trust in my kitchen. Sometime after she moved in with me, I started noticing scratches in non-stick pans, dents on knife edges, and deformations in pots. I started observing my girlfriend when she was cooking and saw her cutting stuff with one of my Japanese chef knives directly on top of this stainless steel counter, and told her right away to use a cutting board. I've seen that when she's done with a pan, she puts it under running water to cool it down. She uses dishwashing soap in my cast iron pans, and the list goes on. I've told her multiple times how to take care of the equipment, and what to do and what not to do, and pretty much every time I correct her, she gets annoyed. So last week I came home, and to my horror, I saw my 5-liter cast iron pot filled up with water that had dishwasher soap in it. It's one of my favorite pots that I've seasoned over the course of 15 years. I snapped and told my girlfriend that she's not allowed to use my expensive equipment anymore, and showed her the crap pans and told her that those are the ones she's gonna have to use in the future. She thought I overreacted, but I refused to budge. I'm getting tired of resharpening knives every other day and having to throw out pans that I've inherited from generations back because they got deformed or rusted beyond restoration. She reminded me of how I said the crap pans was for people I don't trust, and questioned whether I trust her or not, which I do, just not with my kitchen equipment. So please enlighten me, am I the jerk for banning my girlfriend from using my kitchen equipment? It's OP stuff and they're very particular about it. The stuff wasn't respected, and I respect that OP wants more care taken for that stuff. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my friend that the food-based gift card she bought for my birthday is wasteful and obnoxious? I, 23-year-old male, just had my birthday 2 days ago. I don't care much for birthdays, but my friends and family still celebrate it. One of my close friends couldn't attend due to exams, but she sent me a link for a food subscription box-based gift card that was like $100. And although it was supposed to be a nice gesture, I just felt that it was wasteful. Maybe it was the way I was raised, but I just couldn't fathom spending $100 on just food itself. I complained, or rather vented about it, to our mutual friend during the birthday event, and he snitched on me. The friend who sent the gift card was really disappointed and texted me that she was sorry that I didn't enjoy it, but her reasoning was that because I liked food in general, I could perhaps use it to treat myself. I told her while I appreciated it, it just seems excessive and too much just on something frivolous like food. She also knows that I'm financially conscious and thrifty, so I don't know why she still did this. This just escalated the situation, and now she hasn't replied back. My mutual friend conveyed to me that I was being a bit rude and I should apologize, but I don't exactly know if I'm in the wrong for feeling this way. I think OP's a jerk because the person was just trying to be thoughtful, and OP just goes full, I don't understand why you'd give me this is stupid. That's how you end up not getting a gift at all next year. Our next story is, am I the jerk for exploding 10 years of repressed rage at my mother-in-law? Hey, so I, 27-year-old female, and my husband, 29-year-old male, have been together for 10 years. I was 16 when I met my husband, and being that I had no family of my own, I was excited to meet my then boyfriend, now my husband's side of the family. The first meeting went great. Nick told them I was Greek, as he was Greek and my mom's side is, and they reacted by trying to ask me things in Greek. It was overwhelming at first. I respectfully let them know that I'm not familiar with my mom's side, but I am always willing to learn. Although disappointed, they all understood. To impress them, however, I just learned the language enough to have small conversations, learned how to cook the food they showed me, and just celebrated them like they were my own blood family. Until the question got raised one day, where my parents were and who raised me. Not going into it, but they were not happy at all with the small information I gave them. After that, I was treated terribly. Any attempts at Greek, they laughed at, but if I stopped learning, then they could talk about me in front of my face, which they frequently did, expecting me not to understand until I did understand. They called me disgusting nicknames and even blamed me for things that I didn't even do. I was the punching bag, and although at first Nick didn't do anything to help, he soon started stepping up for me. This was all instigated by Thea, who was the most narcissistic person you could meet. Very like Instagram fake and two-faced. Another couple years go by with this bullying, and his mom realized that either she joined them in bullying me, or she would lose her son. She really buckled down when I had my first son, Atticus, and though she didn't stick up for me, she also didn't join in with them anymore. So one day, Nick's cousin brings home a girl, lovely girl. Now, this cousin is Queen Bee Thea's kid, and she was showered in attention and love. She isn't Greek, but they didn't mind. Months go by, and they try teaching her some Greek, and it was all going well, until she also shared that she went through the same state system as me. I was so worried for her, but they all just smiled and laughed and said that, well, your family now. Something in me snapped. I had to excuse myself with a smile on my face and sat out the front until my husband caught on and we left. We live in the same street as my mother-in-law, so she followed us home soon after and went to have a little go at me for leaving without giving AITA a kiss goodbye. I'm a very calm and patient person normally, and I went off. I brutally unleashed on her 10 years of rage and didn't hold back. My husband told his mom to go home and then told me I'm a jerk for blowing up at her because I'm jealous of Jacob's girlfriend. I do feel bad, but I put up with so much. I'm not sure anymore. Am I the jerk for yelling 10 years worth of repressed rage at my mother-in-law? I don't think OP's the jerk. I just don't understand why they continue to associate with these people. This next story is, am I the jerk for calling my brother fragile, a chauvinist, and insecure? About 2 years ago, my brother Thomas and his then girlfriend moved into our neighborhood. Thomas started attending the same gym my wife Leah goes to. Leah is incredibly fit, and Thomas asked her if she could train him. She agreed. Thomas trains with Leah 3 times a week. Over the 2 years, you can definitely tell that he's added a lot of muscle and lost a lot of weight. He looks great, and I can tell that he's happy. As Thomas improved his fitness, he's gotten a lot cockier. I mean, a lot cockier. He broke up with his girlfriend because he claimed that he was too good for her now. Every time I see him, he's talking about how women are throwing themselves at him, or how his ideal woman can't weigh over 130 pounds. It's annoying and it makes everyone, especially Leah, uncomfortable. Leah doesn't train him anymore, but they still attend the same gym at usually the same time. Leah is 6 months pregnant. She still works out 5 days a week, lifts weights, though much lighter, and keeps to her normal regime as much as possible. Because she's pregnant, she can't complete all the exercises, but she's still incredibly fit. Thomas thinks that she's getting lazy. Every time I see him, he makes a snide comment about Leah putting on weight, or how she's acting like a bum. To me, these comments don't make much sense. Leah is still incredibly fit and active, even pregnant. On some days, he can barely keep up with her. Nevertheless, his comments are disgusting. Leah calls him out, and I call him out, but he rarely listens. I don't speak to him much, but Leah does have to see him in the gym. Thomas and my mom came over to our house completely unannounced. When they came over, Leah was eating a big bowl of carbonara that I'd made, and when she offered them some, Thomas immediately started ranting. Rather than saying no or "I'm okay, thank you," he started yelling about how Leah is getting fat and how she was losing all her appeal, and if she, Leah, was his wife, he'd never let her act like this. It was shocking, and Leah was speechless. I told him to get his fragile, chauvinist, insecure butt out of my house and never to return. He left with my mom. My mom's telling me to apologize. Leah thinks I shouldn't have called him names and should have handled it with a lot more tact. I think OP was plenty tactful. I would do the same if you came inside my house and started insulting my wife. That guy is beyond full of himself. Our next story is, am I the jerk? I told my mom maybe I'd have a boyfriend if she didn't lose money in an accident. 4 years ago, my mom and brother got into a car accident. My brother was 15 at the time and learning to drive. He crashed into a sports car out of panic because mom was screaming at him for messing up on parking. Insurance wouldn't pay, and my parents had to pay out the sports car owner. This really financially hurt us. Some of the money had to come out of my own college fund as my parents' names were also on it. As a result, I missed out on an internship and an opportunity to study abroad because I couldn't afford it. Thanks, Mom. Recently, I was on leave for Thanksgiving. I'm 23 and single. Most girls in my town around my age are already married or have great jobs or are in med school or law school. I'm enlisted in the Navy, not out of patriotism, but because the benefits are good. Mom was complaining about how I'm still not married or in grad school. I snapped and told her, if you didn't bankrupt us after the accident you caused, maybe I'd find a husband at original college. Maybe I wouldn't need to enlist. My dad and most of the family are pissed at me for making her cry and ruining Thanksgiving. I may have gone overboard, but I think it was in the right. We're stuck in this quagmire because of an accident she caused. Am I the jerk? It was an accident, and I'm willing to bet if there was any way they could take that back, they would. I say OP needs to let that go. This next story is, am I the jerk for not attending my brother-in-law's funeral because my sister didn't invite our parents? I'm 22 and Kat is 25. My sister Kat married her husband Mark when she was 21. My interactions with Mark were always kind, respectful, and it's obvious that they loved each other. He was a bit of a negative influence on her though, and because of this, Kat, Mark, and our parents didn't get along that well. I'll be the first one to say that my parents were pretty strict growing up, but it was never anything that serious, and they always looked out for our best interests. Kat also used this opportunity to go low contact with our parents, but me and her kept in touch. Mark passed away recently, and the funeral is next week. It's a private funeral, so only the people invited can come. Kat invited me, and I said I'll be there. I was talking to Mom, and she mentioned Kat hadn't invited them to Mark's funeral, and they're hurt, but they're also worried about her. I was surprised, and I called Kat later. She said she didn't want mom and dad there, and I replied that they just want to look out for her. Kat got pretty mad at me, so I replied that I understand she's in a lot of grief right now, but if she's going to try to break our family apart, I unfortunately won't be attending. Kat said I was picking sides and she doesn't want me there anyway if I'm going to be like that. She didn't reply to my texts afterwards. I'm just sort of caught in the middle, but Kat's angry with me. Am I the jerk? Would you guys agree when I say it's just not OP's place to decide who can and can't go to that funeral? This next story is, am I the jerk for insisting that my sister and husband sign a lease agreement if they want to live with me? My sister and her husband live in Florida. Due to a recent natural disaster there, they're currently homeless. They've sort of worn out their welcome where they were staying. They've asked if they can move in with me until their home is rebuilt. I don't really have a problem with this. I have a guest suite over my garage. They're welcome to stay there. Here is the issue though. Their insurance is rebuilding their home and providing them with funding for temporary housing, but they want to keep all the money from the insurance. I want to help them, but I don't think that's fair. They don't want to pay anything, not even utilities. They think that since I'm family, I should not just help house them, but also pay for their electricity, water, heating, and internet. I told them no, and that if they wanted the suite, they could rent it for cost, and that I would expect all of the money from the insurance company to go into an account that would cover any damage they did while living with me. I think that's fair, but my parents and her in-laws are bugging me to let them move in without anything to cover my butt. Basically, everyone thinks that I'm being a greedy jerk for trying to not get screwed. Am I the jerk? It's definitely mooching if they got money coming in that's meant for temporary housing. Our next story is, am I the jerk for going on a trip with my family that my wife isn't going on? Recently, my parents surprised me, 26-year-old male, and my siblings, 16 and 19, with a ski trip this December, the day after Christmas. My parents offered to pay for my expenses and said that my wife, 24, was welcome to come, but she would need to pay her way. My wife and I are okay financially, but with the trip being so close to Christmas, we wouldn't be able to afford to pay for her to go. Despite this, I really wanted to go on the trip, as it was always a dream of mine to go on a trip like this. My family grew up dirt poor until I was about 15, when my parents' business took off, and now they're extremely comfortable and can afford to pay for trips like this for us. They could certainly afford to pay for my wife to also go, but they've always been this way when it comes to paying things for me versus my wife. My parents think that it's only fair to pay for me when we go out to eat or go on trips, because they're still paying for my siblings. I don't ask them to, but it is nice to save money, so on every trip they'll pay my way. Room and board, excursions, and meals, while my wife was expected to pay her way. This started before we were married. This has always bothered my wife, especially after we got married and they still excluded her. So in these past 2 years since we got married, I try to limit the trips since they bother her so much. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime trip for me, so I thought that she would be supportive of me going, but she's very upset and hurt. She wants to go on the trip, but like I said, we just can't afford it, which she understands. She told me she does want me to have this experience, but she's sad because she thinks my parents purposely exclude her. Am I the jerk for going on the trip and leaving her behind? I still have time to cancel on my parents, but I know they would be sad. This is really more of a question of what side do you want to make more sad? The parents that exclude your wife, or the wife that's being excluded? Either way you pick, somebody's going to be sad. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not letting my husband have any of my banana bread anymore? Whenever I, 29-year-old female, have bananas that are close to going bad, I like to make them into banana bread. I make really good banana bread. However, my husband, 31-year-old male, has this complex about eating baked goods with edges. He always has to eat the middle brownie or slice of cake, etc. So when the banana bread is cool enough to cut into, my husband goes in and cuts out the middle 1 to 2 inches to eat. He won't touch any other part of the bread. I don't mind eating the ends, but I never get to eat the middle, which is, in my opinion, the tastiest part, and worse, it causes the rest of the bread to dry out within a day, which I have to eat alone because my husband won't touch the remains of his pillage. Keep in mind, I'm the one doing all the work to make this bread, as well as all the cleanup. I've asked my husband not to do this, but he doesn't seem to care. So I just made a banana bread, and when he asked me if it was done, I informed him he isn't allowed to have any if he can't start cutting from the end like a civilized person. I've been living with his banana bread shenanigans for years, and I've had enough. My husband says I'm being ridiculous. Am I the jerk? Even if they have a favorite cut, they as your husband should share, especially considering you made it. That said, our final story of the day is, am I the jerk for refusing to give my cousin-in-law my Taylor Swift ticket? I, 17-year-old female, recently got Taylor Swift tickets for her Eras tour. Now, as you probably know, it was very difficult to get these tickets, and I actually waited 5+ hours in the Ticketmaster queue to get them. I've loved Taylor Swift since I was 2 years old. My cousin John, 29-year-old male, recently got married to his wife Jane, 27-year-old female, and I attended the wedding with my parents. At the wedding, another cousin of mine asked me whether or not I got the tickets, and I excitedly said yes. John overheard and pulled me aside and asked me if there was any chance I'd be willing to give my ticket to his wife, as she also tried to get tickets but didn't manage to get any. I said I waited a long time to get my ticket and that I didn't want to give it up because, as he knows, I love Taylor Swift and I'm really excited about going to the concert with my friends. He seemed disappointed but ultimately walked away. I went back to my table and thought nothing of it. Then John and Jane had their first dance, which was to Taylor Swift's Lover. At the end of the dance, he got the microphone and told everyone at the wedding that I had so kindly decided to give Jane my Taylor Swift ticket as a wedding gift. Jane started crying and said I was the best cousin ever and that I made her wedding day 10 times better. I stood there in shock and I asked if I could speak to her in private, but she brushed me off. I tried to talk to John too, but he ignored me. My whole family came up to me and was saying how mature I was for giving my ticket to Jane and how it was the perfect way to welcome her to the family. I told them I never said I would give her my ticket and I was planning on keeping it and going with my friends like I'd originally planned. Word got back to John and Jane actually started sobbing and saying that I was selfish for not giving her my ticket and that since I didn't get her a wedding gift, the least I could do is give her my ticket. I stood my ground and said that I didn't know her anything. John then said I've already seen one of Taylor's concerts before and that Jane hasn't, so it's only fair that I give her my ticket. I said that I understand that it was really frustrating to wait in that queue only to not get tickets, but it wasn't my job to make sure that Jane did, and that if they were patient, the scalper prices might go down by the show, and she might be able to snag tickets then. John screamed at me to leave and said that I ruined his wedding. Some of my family has been messaging me, saying I'm a selfish witch for ruining Jane's wedding, and I should have waited until after the wedding to tell her that I wasn't giving her my ticket. Others, including my parents, agree that I had no obligation to give up my ticket. I hate conflict though, and a part of me wonders whether I should have just let her have the ticket. So am I the jerk? Not only do they not deserve the ticket, I'm glad OP didn't wait until after, because I think that would only further cement in everybody's minds there that OP did intend to give that ticket up. Shut that down immediately. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.